Chapter 30:11. Appear. However, Lung Bai would not let the two of them off just because of that. After all, they had split into 3 teams and their goal was to exterminate the human race. These two were humans and he naturally had no reason to spare them. Boom! A huge dragon claw swept out from the void and caught up with Xingjing and Shu Chen-shen in the blink of an eye. In front of this huge dragon claw, Xingjing and Shu Chen-shen were as tiny as ants. In particular, the terrifying aura emitted from the dragon claw was like a heavy object pressing down on their bodies, causing them to feel suffocated and even affected their movements. It's over. Feeling the pressure coming closer and closer, Xingjing and Shu Chen-shen's hearts sank. They were very anxious and knew that if they were hit by the dragon claw, they would be severely injured at the very least and die at the very worst. Just as the hearts of the two people were filled with despair, the incomparably huge dragon claw exploded into a cluster of bloody mist with a poochy sound. Lung Bai let out a miserable cry and hurriedly withdrew his right claw. His serene cold gaze was filled with fear as he looked towards another empty space. In the depths of the void, a figure stood in the air, holding a bow in his left hand and an arrow in his right, like a peerless god of war. And that figure was naturally Zhuo Wen himself. Behind Zhuo Wen, the 3 people standing were naturally Jiang Qi Sheng, Luo Shi, and Wu Jian. Senior Shu, Senior Xingjing, are you all right? Luo Shi hurried to Shu Chen-shen and Xingjing's side and asked with concern. Junior Luo Shi, why are you with Long Wen? Xingjing's beautiful eyes first glanced at Zhuo Wen before she came back to her senses and asked Luo Shi. Actually, it's like this. Luo Shi gave a brief account of how they met Zhuo Wen and Xingjing showed a look of understanding. At the same time, she finally understood why Luo Shi had asked her for Lung Bai's exact location. It seemed that the person he really wanted was Long Wen. Brother Long, I've been saved by you again. I'm afraid I won't be able to repay this debt of gratitude in the future. Void Servant Shun looked at Zhuo Wen with a wry smile. The two of you don't have to take it to heart. The foreign races have betrayed us and dared to massacre us humans in the Door of Darkness. I, Long Wen, am a member of the human race after all. Naturally, I can't let such a thing happen. Zhuo Wen waved his hand and continued, you guys hide behind me first. Leave this Lung Bai to me. No need. You're fighting alone while the rest of us are hiding behind you. How can this be? I know that Brother Long, your strength far surpasses any one of us. Although we can't deal with Lung Bai, leave those small fries around Lung Bai to us. Xingjing hurriedly said. Junior sister Xingjing is right. You can't shoulder all the enemies by yourself. We'll help you share some of the burden. Jiang Qi Sheng also stood up. Luo Shi, Wu Jian and Shu Chen-shen nodded in agreement. All right. Leave this dragon to me. I'll leave those guys to you. Now, kill them for me. I will restrain that dragon from behind. But you still have to be careful. Zhuo Wen said in a low voice. Jiang Qisheng and the others nodded and rushed toward the dozen or so foreign races behind Lung Bai. Although these foreign races were strong, they had been injured by the divine arrow earlier and their strength had decreased greatly. Zhuo Wen knew that with Jiang Qi Sheng and the others' strength, it would not be difficult to get rid of these foreign races. A bunch of ants, how dare you be arrogant in front of me? Exasperated, Lung Bai let out a loud roar and slammed out a gigantic dragon claw once again, landing directly on top of Jiang Qisheng and the others. It pressed down fiercely, wanting to crush Jiang Qisheng and the others to dust. Jiang Qi Sheng and the others sucked in a breath of cold air. But soon, they breathed a sigh of relief because a divine arrow had shot out from the void and landed accurately on the dragon claw, instantly turning it into powder. Lung Bai roared to the sky in pain and looked at Zhuo Wen in the distance. He was furious, but at the same time, a deep sense of fear appeared in the depths of his eyes. Although this human ant in front of him was only an eternal overlord, the divine bow and divine arrow in his hands were not ordinary. They could easily shatter his body and completely disintegrate his attack. Although he was a golden dragon with an extremely strong body and astonishing recovery ability, his dragon claws had been pierced through many times. It would take a lot of his essence to recover, and the side effects on his body were not small. We have to destroy this human first. Lung Bai realized the threat this person posed. He knew that if he allowed this person to continue shooting arrows, he would not have any room to retaliate. When he thought of this, Lung Bai's body rushed out like lightning. He rushed towards Zhuo Wen, who was in the empty space a short distance away. That huge golden dragon body was just like an incomparably huge sun. It was so hot that no one dared to look at it. Jiang Qixing and the others were already engaged in a fierce battle with the dozen or so foreign races, and the battle fluctuations were quite vast and terrifying. Although Jiang Qixing's side had fewer people than the foreign races, they had an overwhelming advantage. The foreign races were almost completely suppressed by Jiang Qixing and the others, and they did not have much strength to fight back. Judging from the situation, it was only a matter of time before these foreign races were destroyed by Jiang Qixing and the others. Lung Bai had obviously thought of this as well, so he did not delay and arrived in front of Zhuowen in an instant. He opened his bloody mouth and spat out a huge and terrifying ball of golden light. The golden ball shot out at an extremely fast speed, bringing with it boundless radiance. It carried with it an astonishing might as it fell towards Zhuowen. Zhuowen's eyes were solemn as he stared at the huge golden ball. He thought of something and said in a low voice, "Could this be a dragon ball?" Zhuowen had heard of dragon balls and knew that they were the source of the dragon's power and the most important thing. It was said that dragon balls were one of the hardest things in the world, and it was very difficult to destroy them. And the power of the dragon pearl was even more earth-shattering. Generally, when the dragon race took out the dragon pearl to fight, it meant that the dragon race's battle had reached the point of life and death. The dragon pearl was the dragon race's final trump card, and also their most powerful trump card. Zhuowen did not dare to be careless. He took out another Genesis-grade divine arrow and pulled the bowstring to a full moon. Terrifying killing intent filled the surrounding void. With a whoosh, the divine arrow shot out and slammed into the dragon ball with shocking killing intent. Ding! A crisp sound filled the air. The power of the divine arrow penetrated the heavens and the earth, and it slowed down the falling of the dragon pearl by quite a bit. However, it was only a delay. Zhuo Wen was shocked to discover that the divine arrow made a crisp cracking sound. The divine arrow was actually broken, and the dragon ball continued to fly towards him. Chapter 30:12. Lung Zhuowen's eyes flashed. Although Lung Bai was stronger than Shou Yu, he wasn't that much stronger. If it weren't for this dragon ball, Zhuowen could have killed Lung Bai with an ordinary Genesis divine arrow. However, it was a pity that Lung Bai was an extraordinary being. To think that he would be able to nurture such a terrifying dragon pearl within his body. Even a god of creation stage divine arrow was unable to do anything to it. Haha. Human, you're dead meat. Do you really think that you are invincible just because you have that strange divine bow? What a fool's dream. Lung Bai naturally saw the divine arrow that was crushed by the dragon ball and couldn't help but laugh heartily. Lung Bai knew that the divine arrow that this human relied on was no longer effective against his dragon balls. This meant that this human was dead meat. I won't kill you immediately. I will slowly torture you to death. You actually forced me to use a trump card like the dragon balls. Lung Bai's eyes were cold as he glared at Zhuowen, revealing a cruel expression. Although the dragon balls were powerful, releasing them was a very dangerous thing. At the same time, it consumed a lot of his energy, and there were also great side effects. This kind of method was usually used when the dragon race was in a life and death crisis. Lung Bai released the dragon ball to attack Zhuo Wen as soon as he came up. Clearly, he valued Zhuo Wen very much and knew that only this kind of method could suppress this person. Zhuo Wen stood in place. His eyes were calm, as if he didn't care about the approaching dragon ball. Pretending to be calm? Haha, let's see how long you can pretend. Lung Bai sneered. Looking at Zhuowen's calm eyes, he was actually very angry. He hated the calm expression of this human youth in front of him. If he remembered correctly, this young man had always had this kind of calm expression since he appeared, as if there was nothing that could change his expression. Zhuowen completely ignored Lung Bai's sarcasm. Instead, he slowly pulled out a blood-stained horn from the large world. This blood-stained horn did not have any special aura. It was very ordinary, just like an ordinary object. However, the moment Zhuowen placed the blood-stained horn on the divine bow, A murderous intent that could pierce through the will of the heavens fiercely surged out. It was like a huge wave that was taller than the previous one, as if it wanted to drown everything, filling the space between heaven and earth. The moment Leng Bai felt the murderous intent, his pupils shrank to the size of needles, revealing a look of disbelief. This murderous intent was much more terrifying than any of the previous times. The moment he came into contact with this murderous intent, all the hair on his body stood on end, his muscles tightened, and his breathing stagnated. This suffocating feeling made him very uncomfortable, and his heart was very uneasy. The divine arrow that this person took out is very different from the divine arrows from before. Leng Bai frowned and muttered to himself. Although he felt that the blood-stained horn was not ordinary, he was more confident in his dragon balls. He was very confident that in this starry sky, there were very few treasures that could shatter his dragon balls. Unless it was an expert who was much stronger than him, such as a supreme expert at the level of a master of heaven. Of course, the dragon balls in his body would become stronger as his strength increased. If he could also become a master of heaven in the future, then his dragon balls would naturally be even more terrifying. Ordinary masters of heaven would not be able to shatter them. It was a pity that his cultivation had not reached such a terrifying level yet. Boom! Zhuowen pulled the bowstring to a full moon and then released it. The bowstring actually let out a terrifying sound like a thunderstorm, and the surrounding void was accompanied by an extremely ear-piercing sound of tearing cloth. The murderous intent, which was already terrifying, seemed to have solidified at this moment. The surrounding void seemed to have solidified and was completely affected by this murderous intent. Ding! Hu Yi's divine arrow, which carried a monstrous murderous intent, finally landed on the dragon balls and immediately let out a crisp sound. That sound only rang once before it fell silent. However, very soon, the sound underwent an incredible transformation, from a ding to a ka. Then, Leng Bai spat out a mouthful of blood. His huge dragon body strangely rolled and struggled in the void. His huge lantern-sized eyes stared fixedly at the rising dragon balls in front of him. Countless cracks appeared on the surface of the dragon balls. These cracks looked like patterns, and there were many of them densely packed together. Shattered, shattered? How is this possible? How could my dragon balls shatter? Leng Bai let out a heart-wrenching scream. Although his body was permanently damaged due to the shattering of the dragon pearl, and intense pain filled his entire body, Leng Bai still couldn't move. However, the intense despair caused by the shattering of the dragon balls covered all of his senses. He knew that the shattering of the dragon balls meant that he would be crippled in the future. He would never be able to cultivate again. Bang! The dragon balls emitted an extremely dazzling light. Then, the moment the cracks spread to the extreme, they shattered into countless golden powder and scattered in the air. Poochie! Leng Bai spat out a mouthful of blood. His dragon body stopped struggling. Instead, he floated in the void, motionless. Only his rapid breathing indicated that he was still alive. Zhuowen slowly walked to Leng Bai's side. Looking at Leng Bai's unwilling eyes and his fading life force, he knew that Leng Bai wouldn't live for much longer. I can't accept this. I actually died at the hands of an eternal overlord human. Human, if it weren't for the divine bow and arrow in your hands, you would be nothing more than an ant in my eyes. I could kill you with one claw, Leng Bai said viciously. The winner takes all. The winner takes all. Isn't this the law of nature? A loss is a loss. Why do you have to talk so much nonsense? Zhuowen said indifferently. Leng Bai spat out a mouthful of blood and said coldly, Human, don't be too happy. You killed one of my race. We won't let you go. There are 2 other teams similar to mine. Shora Yu and Hu Ben will definitely avenge me. If Moses and the Saintess of the Phoenix people find out, they won't let you go either. Zhuowen's lips curled into a mocking smile. Shora Yu. I'm really sorry, but Shora Yu has already gone to the underworld before you. You should be able to go down and meet up with him soon. After he finished speaking, Zhuowen didn't waste any more words. His right palm suddenly landed between Leng Bai's eyebrows. A powerful force poured out and transformed into a terrifying storm vortex that invaded Leng Bai's soul and annihilated it. Leng Bai slowly closed his eyes, filled with shock, resentment. Not long after Zhuowen finished off Lung Bai, Jiang Qixing and the others' battle also ended. After dealing with the battlefield, Jiang Qixing and the others rushed to Zhuowen's side. When they saw the fallen Lung Bai at Zhuowen's feet, their eyes revealed a trace of shock. As expected of Brother Long. You're still so strong. Xing Jing's beautiful eyes looked deeply at Zhuowen. She was completely convinced. It wasn't just Xing Jing. Jiang Qixing, Xu Qinshen, and the others also revealed looks of reverence. Every powerhouse was worthy of respect. Furthermore, this powerhouse had saved their lives, so they naturally respected him even more. I was just lucky. Zhuowen smiled faintly, but his gaze fell on the western sky and slowly narrowed. Chapter 30:13. Hu Benjuowen's eyes slowly narrowed as a dignified look flashed across his face. In his perception, there was a vast aura rushing towards him at high speed. This aura was even stronger than Lung Bai's. Moreover, Zhuowen was certain that the source of this aura must be a foreign race. It was impossible for a human to emit such a violent aura. Zhuowen's actions naturally attracted the attention of Jiang Qixing and the others. They followed Zhuowen's gaze and looked into the distance, only to find that there was nothing there at all. Although their cultivations were stronger than Zhuowen's, their divine senses were much weaker than Zhuowen's, and the range they could explore was much smaller than Zhuowen's. Therefore, the enemies that Zhuowen could detect in advance were beyond the reach of their divine senses, which was why they were puzzled. Brother Long, what's wrong? Why do you look so serious? Jiang Qixing asked doubtfully. Zhuowen said in a deep voice, I sense a powerful aura rapidly approaching here. If I'm not mistaken, this aura should be the last foreign race team, the team led by Hu Ben from the Black Tiger clan. Jiang Qixing and the others were stunned. Although Zhuowen's strength was indeed very strong, it wasn't to the extent that his perception was stronger than theirs, right? They had repeatedly used their divine senses to investigate, but there was nothing strange in the direction Zhuowen was looking. There was not even a shadow of a foreign race. You guys hide first. Hu Ben's target is very clear. He's here. I'm afraid that after Lung Bai was killed, he secretly sent this message to Hu Ben. That's why Hu Ben rushed over so quickly, Zhuowen said in a deep voice. Jiang Qixing and the others hesitated for a moment, but in the end, they nodded and found a rather secluded cave in a nearby mountain range. The few of them hid in the cave and spread out their divine senses to observe the surrounding environment and situation. Soon, they were surprised to find that a streak of light was really flying towards them from the distant void. The streak of light was extremely fast, and it didn't take long for it to fall into the valley where Zhuowen was. The flowing light stopped above the valley. The brilliance on its surface faded away, revealing a team. This was a group of non-human beings, led by a tiger-headed non-human being. The tiger-headed man's aura was very vast. Just by standing there, the aura that lingered around his body swept out like a violent hurricane. The surrounding void seemed to be unable to withstand the tiger-headed man's aura and began to distort and shatter. All of the foreign beings in the group were looking at this tiger-headed being with reverence and fear. Hu Ben looked around and saw the many corpses of the outsiders scattered around the valley. His eyes narrowed, looking very unfriendly. In the end, Hu Ben's gaze landed on Lung Bai's huge dragon body not far away. His eyes immediately burned with rage. Human, tell me who killed Lung Bai and the others, and I will leave your corpse intact. Hu Ben finally turned his gaze to Zhuowen not far away. His voice was very loud and clear, as if he was shouting beside your ear. It was very ear-piercing. Zhuowen's gaze was calm. Looking at Hu Ben, who was half his height, he said coolly, no matter what. You want to kill me? Hu Ben sneered and said, is there something wrong with your head? It's a matter of course for us foreign races to kill you humans. In our eyes, you humans are only fit to be prey. Speaking up to here, Hu Ben appeared impatient and continued, still not telling me about Lung Bai? It's your greatest honor to be able to leave you a complete corpse. Don't push your luck. Zhuowen chuckled. His gaze was as sharp as a knife, and his tone was calm as water as he said, I really know quite a bit about Lung Bai. Don't talk so much crap. Hurry up and tell me. Hu Ben panted heavily and said coldly. I killed him, Zhuowen said. Hu Ben's pupils constricted slightly, and he could not help being stunned. Immediately, he flew into a great rage and said, "A mere eternal lord trash actually dares to fool me. Hu Lin, exterminate this trash for me." Hu Ben's words had just come out when another Black Tiger Clan foreign race member walked out from the team behind him. The team that Hu Ben led this time was basically all members of their Black Tiger Clan. This Hu Lin's strength was considered to be at the bottom in their team. He was merely just an eternal lord. But the Black Tiger Clan's talent was extraordinary. In the same rank, their strength far surpassed humans. In Hu Ben's view, Hu Lin's cultivation was the same as this human in front of him. But he was able to brutally torture this human to death. Don't let this human die so easily. Let him suffer a little more pain. When Hu Lin passed by Hu Ben's side, Hu Ben said coolly. Hu Ben did not deliberately lower his voice. His voice was loud and clear. Zhuowen's side heard it clearly. Zhuowen knew that this was deliberately done by Hu Ben. "Lord Hu Ben, don't worry. Even if you didn't say it, I would still do it." Daring to lie to our respected Lord Hu Ben, this human is tired of living. Hu Lin's voice was slightly gloomy and cold. He bowed respectfully towards Hu Ben and walked towards Zhuowen. A pair of slender and dark eyes stared straight at Zhuowen. Bang! When Hu Lin took the 7th step, he suddenly stomped his right foot. The sound of a cannonball being fired rang out. Hu Lin shot out explosively like an arrow leaving the bow. Hu Lin's acceleration was unexpected. If it were an ordinary person, they would definitely be frightened by Hu Lin's sudden actions. Unfortunately, Zhuowen was not an ordinary person. He looked at Hu Lin, who flew over, the corners of his mouth full of mockery. It was fine if this Hu Ben looked down on him, but even this Hu Lin dared to look down on him too. He actually had a look of indifference. This was not putting him in his eyes at all. "Human, don't worry. I won't kill you right away. I'll let you live for a while longer." Hu Lin's savage laughter was just inches away. Zhuowen slowly raised his head and discovered that Hu Lin had already appeared in front of him. And that huge fist of Hu Lin's was reflected in his eyes, as if it could directly tear Zhuowen's entire body apart in the next moment. Hu Lin saw Zhuowen's stunned appearance, and felt even more disdain in his heart. This human in front of him was indeed a coward, to actually be scared silly. Getting rid of this kind of trash, he did not feel any sense of accomplishment at all. Thinking of this, the strength of Hu Lin's right fist decreased a lot, and the target of his fist was originally towards Zhuowen's face, but now it had changed to Zhuowen's abdomen. He was afraid that if he did not control his strength well, he would kill this human in front of him with a single punch. Crack! Suddenly, the crisp sound of bones cracking rang out. Chapter 30:14. Bombardment. Hu Lin was much taller than Zhuowen. At this moment, his back was facing them. After throwing out a punch, he stood there motionlessly. Zhuowen's figure was basically covered by Hu Lin, so Hu Ben could not see clearly what was going on with Zhuowen. However, Hu Ben could clearly see that Hu Lin's body was trembling. Although the trembling was not big, it was still discovered by Hu Ben. Something's not right. Hu Ben's eyes narrowed. Just as he finished speaking, the sound of bones cracking became even louder, followed by a shrill scream. Only then did Hu Ben realize that the scream came from Hu Lin. Hu Lin's entire body was trembling. His body tilted, and he could not help but fall to the side. Hu Ben finally saw clearly that the human youth that he looked down on was holding a white blade in his hand. This blade was over a meter long and completely white. It emitted a dazzling light and a soul-stirring aura. This blade pierced through Hu Lin's fist, and followed along Hu Lin's fist, directly piercing through his entire arm. Fresh blood poured out from the wound on Hu Lin's arm without any regard for his life. It looked very bloody and terrifying. Poochie. Zhuowen's gaze was cold and emotionless. His right hand that held the blade suddenly swung, and instantly, Hu Lin's right arm exploded into a bloody mist. Hu Lin screamed, his eyes filled with fear. How could this be? How could this human be so strong? Hu Lin wanted to retreat, but to his horror, he realized that the human in front of him had already formed a seal with his right hand, forming a huge blade of light, and piercing towards his heart. Hu Lin did not expect this human to be so sinister, to actually have such a trick up his sleeve. His heart was directly pierced through by the blade of light. Hu Lin's entire body was pierced through. His entire body twitched, and he kept struggling. Unfortunately, Zhuowen's gaze was cold, and he did not even look at Hu Lin. Instead, he pulled out the blade of light in his left hand, and unceremoniously pierced towards Hu Lin's forehead. Poochie. Hu Lin glared at Zhuowen, his eyes filled with unwillingness, regret, and resentment. In the end, his vision turned black, and he collapsed to the ground, completely losing his breath. The sky-opening blade was a divine ability created by Pangu. It was extremely destructive. As long as the sky-opening blade pierced through a place, it would basically be impossible for it to remain intact. Since the space between Hu Lin's eyebrows had been pierced through, it was obvious that the soul in between his eyebrows could not have survived. It must have been destroyed as well. Plop. Hu Lin's huge body fell to the ground, while Zhuowen kept his sky-splitting blade, raised his head, and looked indifferently at Hu Ben, who was already in a daze. You sent this kind of trash to kill me, aren't you looking down on me too much? Zhuowen's expression was grave and stern, but the mocking smile at the corner of his mouth became even more intense. In Hu Ben's eyes, it was so glaring. Did you really kill Lung Bai? Hu Ben's gaze became serious, and he began to carefully size up the human before him. Previously, he did not believe it, but now, he somewhat believed it. Although Hu Lin's cultivation level was not high, his strength was extremely terrifying. He could even battle a human half-step Genesis tier, but he had been killed with a single move by this human youth before him. Perhaps this human really was the real culprit behind Lung Bai's death. Heh, your ears are probably not very good, right? Do you need me to repeat this sentence? Zhuowen smiled coldly, and slowly retreated, pulling a certain distance away from Hu Ben and the others. The team Hu Ben had brought with him was not small, and among them, there were over 70 outsiders. Added with such a powerful leader like Hu Ben, Jiang Qisheng and the others had said that Hu Ben's team was the strongest. He planned to use the distance and use the Huyi divine bow to kill a portion of the outsiders first. All of you, attack! Don't let this human escape! Hu Ben immediately roared when he saw Zhuowen's retreating figure. Whoosh! 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 The outsiders behind Hu Ben all roared, and they transformed into streaks of black shadows that shot toward Zhuowen. Furthermore, these foreign races were very smart. They split up and approached Zhuowen from different directions, completely blocking off all of Zhuowen's escape routes. Zhuowen sneered, and he immediately took out the Huyi divine bow. He drew several Genesis tier divine arrows and shot them out. Instantly, the outsiders who were charging at the forefront of the group were pierced through by the divine arrows. Moreover, the recoil of the divine arrows was very strong, and they pierced through 3 outsiders in a row, piercing them together. The terrifying killing intent seeped into the bodies of the 3 outsiders, causing them to scream in agony. In the end, they exploded into clouds of blood and disappeared from the world. Moreover, these divine arrows seemed to have a mind of their own. After killing one outsider, they would chase after the next one. In just 10 breaths of time, close to half of the outsiders had died under the divine arrows. Hu Ben was dumbfounded. He finally understood why this human in front of him said that he was the murderer of Lung Bai. It turned out that he had such a terrifying treasure on him. A mere human actually has such a powerful divine weapon. No wonder he is so arrogant. Today, this divine weapon will be mine. Although Hu Ben felt a little sorry for his subordinates who kept dying, his eyes were filled with greed. Hu Ben was tempted by the Huyi divine bow in Zhuowen's hands. He wanted to take it for his own use. Bang! Hu Ben was like a ferocious tiger descending from the mountain. He rushed to the nearest divine arrow and blasted it with his palm. The moment Hu Ben blasted out his palm, a huge tiger claw appeared and slapped the surface of the divine arrow. Ding! The divine arrow was directly sent flying. After rolling a few times in the air, the light on its surface dimmed. Bang! 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 Hu Ben's figure was like lightning. He flickered a few times in the air and slapped away the divine arrows. Then, he rushed straight toward Zhuowen. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and became a little serious. Hu Ben's strength was not simple. He was far above Shoryu and Lung Bai. He was actually a peak creator. He was probably not much weaker than Moses of the mermaid race. After shooting a few more arrows, Zhuowen formed a seal with both hands and used the sky blade. He stomped his feet and rushed toward Hu Ben. When Hu Ben saw that Zhuowen had actually shot out a few more arrows, his gaze turned cold. He had originally planned to intercept the divine arrow again, but he did not expect that Zhuowen had already arrived with the white light blade in his hands. You dare to meet me face to face? You don't know how the word death is written. Hu Ben coldly looked at Zhuowen. He punched out with both fists and let out a shocking tiger roar. Bang! 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 In just an instant, Zhuowen and Hu Ben exchanged a few punches. Zhuowen was directly sent flying, spitting out a mouthful of blood. His face was extremely pale. Hu Ben, on the other hand, was only unsteady. He looked at Zhuowen in surprise. He obviously didn't expect this human, who was just an eternal overlord, to be able to compete with him. This was really not simple. However, Hu Ben also knew that the gap between him and this human was too big. If they continued to fight, this human would undoubtedly die. However, Hu Ben didn't chase after him. His gaze fell on the divine arrows that were wreaking havoc among the alien races. Especially when he saw that his subordinates were either dead or injured by the divine arrows. He knew that he had to stop these divine arrows. Chapter 30:15. Make inquiries. Zhuowen stopped in the distant void. When he saw Hu Ben turn around to save his subordinates, he knew that he had made the right bet. At the same time, he wiped the cold sweat off his forehead as he thought to himself that the gap between his original body and a pinnacle god of creation like Hu Ben was just too great. If it weren't for the profound creation mysterious light protecting him, he wouldn't just be injured, he would have most likely been crippled. He knew that the only way to deal with Hu Ben was to use Hu Yi's godly arrow. With this in mind, Zhuowen pulled out a blood-stained horn from his great world. It was none other than Hu Yi's divine arrow. Zhuowen knocked the Hu Yi divine arrow on the bowstring, then suddenly pulled the bowstring to a full moon. Crackle! A thunderous sound rang out as a shocking killing intent spread out. Hu Ben blasted away the last arrow and saw that he had already killed 2/3 of his subordinates. The remaining 1/3 were basically injured. This caused Hu Ben's face to turn ugly. He scattered all of it on Zhuowen's body. He would definitely torture this human properly before letting him die. Thinking of this, Hu Ben was about to turn around and charge at Zhuowen when he suddenly felt a terrifying killing intent that made his entire body numb. Hu Ben suddenly turned around. Only then did he see that the human in front of him, who he hated the most, was holding a different divine arrow. The aura emanating from this divine arrow was far, far more powerful than that of the God of Creation stage divine arrows that had been unleashed. Especially that killing intent. It made his hair stand on end and made him feel extremely uncomfortable. Is this his trump card? When Hu Ben sent those divine arrows flying, he actually had quite a bit of misgivings in his heart. Although these divine arrows were powerful, they were still lacking if they wanted to kill a golden dragon like Lung Bai. After all, Lung Bai possessed the dragon pearl that even Hu Ben was somewhat fearful of. These mere divine arrows might cause quite a bit of damage to Lung Bai, but wanting to kill Lung Bai was a joke. Now, Hu Ben finally knew how Lung Bai died. It was very likely that he was killed by this terrifying arrow. Whoosh! While Hu Ben was lost in thought, Zhuowen released the bowstring. The Hu Yi god's arrow tore through space and arrived in front of Hu Ben in an instant, brimming with killing intent and terrifying power. At this moment, Hu Ben did not think about anything. Instead, he roared towards the sky and began to transform into his original form, an incomparably huge black tiger. This black tiger was even more terrifying and huge than the golden dragon that Lung Bai had transformed into. Its 4 limbs were covered in layers of muscles, and its aura seemed to be able to suppress all obstacles. Bang! The black tiger suddenly lashed out with a tiger claw, intending to take Hu Yi's divine arrow head-on. To Zhuowen's surprise, the black tiger's right claw really did manage to block the arrow. Although it was rather difficult, it did manage to stop the arrow from moving forward. However, the black tiger didn't last for too long. Hu Yi's arrow actually erupted with even more terrifying killing intent, and the black tiger's right claw was directly blasted into a ball of bloody mist before piercing deep into the black tiger's chest. Roar! The black tiger screamed into the sky and began to roll around in the void. Its huge eyes revealed extreme pain. Boom! The black tiger struggled for a while, and a bloody hole suddenly appeared on its back. The Hu-Yi god's arrow shot out from the bloody hole. Brother Jiang, come out and take care of the remaining foreign races. After sending a message to Jiang Qisheng, Zhuowen slowly landed beside the black tiger. At this moment, Jiang Qisheng and the others who were hiding in the dark were all fired up after receiving Zhuowen's message. They left their hiding places and began to encircle and annihilate the remaining foreign races. In a short while, the remaining foreign races were completely wiped out by Jiang Qisheng and the others. Zhuowen looked at the black tiger in front of him and found that it was not completely dead. From its undulating abdomen, it could be seen that the black tiger was indeed still alive, but it wouldn't live for much longer. The killing intent that the Hu-Yi god's arrow carried was extremely terrifying. After being enhanced by the Hu-Yi god's bow, its killing intent was even more terrifying and destructive. If such a terrifying divine object pierced through one's body, the terrifying killing intent would be able to destroy all life in one's body. No matter how strong one's life force was, they wouldn't be able to live for long. The fact that the black tiger was able to last until now was enough to prove how tenacious his life force was. The black tiger glared at Zhuowen with hatred. He was really unwilling to die like this. Hu Ben, let me ask you. Where did the Phoenix people's Saintess and Moses go? Zhuowen asked indifferently. Logically speaking, Sha Yu, Leng Bai, and Hu Ben, the foreign race's geniuses, should be close to Moses and the Phoenix people's Saintess. They should be in contact with each other often in the door of darkness. Now that he had eliminated Sha Yu, Leng Bai, Hu Ben, and their teams, Moses and the Phoenix people's Saintess didn't seem to have done anything. They went to find the exit. Seeing that they haven't appeared, I'm afraid they have already found the right exit. The black tiger's voice was very weak. Then do you know where the real exit is? Zhuowen asked with a smile. Hu Ben sneered and said, I'm a dying man, and you're the culprit who killed me. Do you think I'll tell you? I don't need you to tell me. I know where the exit is. I'm going to ask you a question about the Phoenix people's Saintess. If you don't answer, then fine. I'll pull out your divine soul and forcefully extract your memories. Then, I'll use the divine fire to constantly roast you. I'll make you beg for death. Zhuowen's voice was calm, but the words he said were as sharp and ruthless as needles. Hu Ben's body trembled slightly. Although he wasn't afraid of death, he was very afraid of his divine soul being tortured. That wasn't a pain that ordinary people could endure. What do you want to ask about the Saintess? Hu Ben's expression was ugly as he asked in a deep voice. I want to ask about the Phoenix people's Saintess background. And when did she become the Saintess? Zhuowen asked. The Phoenix people's Saintess was a new Saintess 3 years ago. As for her origin, she is naturally from the Phoenix people. It is said that the Saintess has the 99 Phoenix body, which is a terrifying physique that is rarely seen in countless years. In our great desolate heaven realm, the Phoenix people's Saintess is like thunder to the ears. Everyone knows about her. Hu Ben replied honestly. 99 Phoenix body? Zhuowen's pupils suddenly shrank. He remembered that when the Phoenix people experts took away Mu Chenxue, they had also said that Mu Chenxue had the rare 99 Phoenix body. And this new Phoenix people's Saintess actually also had the 99 Phoenix body. Could it be a coincidence? Is there anyone else in the Phoenix people who has the 99 Phoenix body? Zhuowen asked while breathing heavily. Chapter 30:16. Leave. Hong. Zhuowen felt a bolt of lightning flash through his mind as it exploded. The Phoenix people's sacred maiden was the only Phoenix people's 99 Phoenix body. This also meant that the sacred maiden was Mu Chenxue? Impossible. She definitely isn't Chen Shui. Zhuowen calmed down. He had looked at the Phoenix people's sacred maiden before, and although the sacred maiden's eyes were bright and beautiful, they definitely weren't Mu Chenxue's eyes. This was because he couldn't find any sense of familiarity in those eyes. Even the sacred maiden's figure and body language, he couldn't find any sense of familiarity. Zhuowen was certain that this sacred maiden wasn't Mu Chenxue and should be someone else. But this girl had the same 99 phoenix body as Mu Chenxue, so what was going on? Adding in what Hu Ben said, the phoenix people didn't have two geniuses with the 99 phoenix body, then where did Mu Chenxue go? Then do you know if the phoenix people have a disciple named Mu Chenxue? Zhuowen asked in a deep voice. Hu Ben coughed out a mouthful of blood and his aura became weaker. He shook his head and no longer said anything as he closed his eyes. Zhuowen silently looked at Hu Ben in front of him. He knew that even if he didn't make a move, Hu Ben wouldn't live for long. Hu Ben shook his head in the end. It was clear that he had never heard of the name Mu Chenxue before. I want to use the heavenly divination technique to calculate Mu Chenxue's fortune. Zhuowen's eyes had a trace of worry. He always thought that Mu Chenxue would be well received by the phoenix people, so he didn't use the heavenly divination technique to calculate anything related to Mu Chenxue. Now that he realized that something was wrong, he knew that he had to use the heavenly divination technique. At this moment, after Jiang Qixing and the others took care of the other races, they all gathered around Zhuowen. However, when they saw Zhuowen sitting cross-legged on the ground with his hands forming seals, as if he was calculating something, they were all silent and didn't disturb Zhuowen. An hour later, strange ripples appeared around Zhuowen. These ripples passed without a trace, but they made Jiang Qixing and the others' hearts palpitate. However, these ripples quickly dissipated. Jiang Qixing and the others wanted to investigate, but the ripples didn't seem to exist. This made them a bit confused. Poochie. Suddenly, Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes opened of the phoenix people of course. Zhuowen was Mu Chenxue earlier. He had used the heavenly divination technique to calculate the outcome of Mu Chenxue's misfortune, not hesitating to expend even more of his lifespan. Chenxue had he of Chenxue's Chenxue of Chenxue of fate. Chen Shui Chenxue's Chenxue Shui Chening. Who did it? Zhuowen muttered in a low voice. He clenched his fists, and the sound of bones cracking could be heard. Brother Long, what happened? Jiang Qixing also noticed that Zhuowen was in a bad mood, especially after seeing Zhuowen vomit blood. He couldn't help but ask worriedly. Thank you for your concern, Brother Jiang. I'm fine. Zhuowen waved his hand, a trace of loneliness and worry in his eyes. He did not expect that the art of divination would not be able to predict Mu Chenxue's fate. He knew that someone must have deliberately concealed Mu Chenxue's fate. But who was it? To be able to block the fate of a cultivator, just how powerful must one's cultivation be? However, Zhuowen did not become dispirited because of this. Instead, his eyes were filled with determination. He knew that the only way to find out about Mu Chenxue's whereabouts was to look for the Phoenix people. The people from the Phoenix people who had come to the Dark Portal this time were the Phoenix people's Sacred Lady and the two clan elders, Elder Hong. I'll go find the Phoenix people's Sacred Lady first. This time, I must find her and get to the bottom of this. Zhuowen knew that with his current strength, the gap between him and the two clan elders of the Phoenix people was too big. The two of them were not equal at all. The two clan elders would probably ignore him, and they might even attack him. Although the Phoenix people's Sacred Lady was brilliant, talented, and far stronger than her peers, Zhuowen was not weak either. He cultivated the Pangu sacred body, and his strength was earth-shattering among his peers. He could already feel that his clone, which had integrated with the Gonggong parasite in the Great World, would soon break through to the 6-star Pangu sacred body. If his clone could reach the 6-star Pangu sacred body, Zhuowen believed that he could crush all the cultivators who had entered the Dark Portal this time, including the mysterious Phoenix people's Sacred Lady. At this moment, Zhuowen's communication jade talisman lit up. Zhuowen picked up the communication jade talisman and found that the message was from Ma Yujie. According to the message, Ma Yujie and the others had gone in the wrong direction and did not leave the exit of this area. Ma Yujie also asked Zhuowen if he was going in the right direction. Zhuowen was a little embarrassed. He had just found the passage in the void when he found Luo Shi and Wu Jian were being chased by the alien race. After saving Luo Shi and Wu Jian and learning that the alien race was chasing after the humans, Zhuowen hastily covered up the entrance of the passage and came to kill the alien race team. Until now, he had not had time to go to the void passage to see what was going on. Zhuowen sent a message to Ma Yujie, asking him to come and meet him first. Then, he said to Luo Shi, Wu Jian, and the others, "What are you going to do next?" Luo Shi and Wu Jian looked at each other, and Luo Shi said with shame, "Senior brother Long, can we follow you for the time being?" "Follow me?" Zhuowen was taken aback and then shook his head to say, "I'm sorry, I still have some important matters to attend to and it's not convenient for me to bring you along." Zhuowen had only met Luo Shi and Wu Jian once, and Zhuowen would naturally not bring them along with him after saving them, to become their free bodyguards. Moreover, the threat of the alien race had been dealt with by him and Luo Shi and Wu Jian's safety was guaranteed, so there was no need for them to follow him. Moreover, Zhuowen had quite a number of secrets on him, and if Luo Shi and Wu Jian were to follow him, it would be very inconvenient for him. Luo Shi's face flushed red. She knew that her request was a little overboard, and seeing Zhuowen reject her so bluntly, she forced a smile and did not mention anything about following Zhuowen anymore. "The four of you, Brother Jiang and I still have some matters to attend to and will take our leave now." Zhuowen cupped his fists at Luo Shi, Xing Jing and the others before he led Jiang Qisheng away. Looking at Zhuowen's departing back, Xing Jing could not help but exclaim in admiration, "This Long Wen is really a freak. He's obviously just an itinerant cultivator, but he actually possesses such powerful powers." Xu Chenshen nodded in agreement and said, "This person is already a top prodigy like Zhongli Haoyang and Yi Qidong. I feel that if Zhongli Haoyang really fought with this person, he would not have much of a chance of winning." Luo Shi and Wu Jian were both shocked. Xing Jing and Xu Chenshen's evaluation of Long Wen was just too high. Chapter 3017. In the land of spacetime distortion, let's notify our other brothers and sisters first. They don't need to hide anymore. The problem of the alien invaders has been completely dealt with, Xingjing suddenly suggested. Xu Chenshen and Luo Shi agreed, and they sent word to all the cultivators they knew about this matter. Soon, the cultivators who'd been hiding all over the gear zone emerged from their hiding places, cheering that the alien invaders had been dealt with. It was also at this moment that the name of the dragon rune was spread by word of mouth. Almost all cultivators who had entered the gear zone and were lucky enough to survive knew of the existence of the dragon rune. They all knew that he'd single-handedly dealt with the three powerful alien teams. Many of them were sincerely grateful to this Long Wen whom they'd never even met. Of course, there were also some cultivators who had doubts. They felt that the alien teams were terrifyingly powerful, and that Zhuowen couldn't possibly have dealt with them all by himself. Of course, none of this had anything to do with Zhuowen. Zhuowen was currently standing at the entrance to the void tunnel he'd first discovered, waiting silently. Before long, a streak of light swept over from the distance. The first to enter Zhuowen's eyes was a fatty, and behind him was an extremely beautiful young woman. These two were Ma Yujie and Yaro Shangjuan, who'd split up with Zhuowen earlier. "Long Wen, have you checked the void tunnel yet?" Ma Yujie's expression was ugly. His eyes were gloomy as he first glanced at the void tunnel before looking towards Zhuowen. "Not yet. I was waiting for you to go in together." Zhuowen smiled faintly. Ma Yujie's gaze darkened, like a volcano about to erupt. Zhuowen was a little confused. What was wrong with this fatty? His expression didn't seem right as soon as they met. Yaro Shangjuan was the first to speak. "Brother Long, the place we went to just now was a void tunnel similar to this one. We went in to explore, but we didn't find anything. We even encountered a Lord of Creation level beast. Thanks to Brother Ma's help, we were able to leave." Zhuowen finally understood why Ma Yujie's expression was so unfriendly. So that was the reason. As it turned out, the fatty was also afraid that the void passage contained a Lord of Creation beast. But of course, Zhuowen was even more wary of Ma Yujie. For this fella to be able to escape unscathed from the hands of the mutated beast of the Master of Creation, his strength must be pretty decent indeed. "Brother Ma, you've analyzed it before. There are only 2 exits in this area. Since the passage you're going to is not the exit, then this place should be the real exit. Zhuowen's eyes flashed as he said in a low voice. Only then did Ma Yujie's expression look slightly better, and he said, then let's go in and take a look first. However, you will be the vanguard here. At this point, Ma Yujie pointed at Zhuowen. Zhuowen looked at Ma Yujie speechlessly and said, then I'll take the lead. You guys follow me closely. With that, Zhuowen took the lead and entered the void passage. Ma Yujie followed closely behind, followed by Yarou Shangjuan and Jiang Qisheng. As soon as he entered the passageway, Zhuowen actually felt dizzy. It was as if the moment he entered this space-time had been distorted. There was no doubt that the space-time inside this passageway was different from the space-time outside, and the difference was not small. Moreover, Zhuowen noticed that Ma Yujie and Yarou Shangjuan behind him did not show too much of a difference. It seemed that the situation of the passageway they had entered before was not much different from the one they were entering now. Otherwise, they would not have been able to adapt so quickly. Brother Long, be careful. This passageway is too similar to the one Brother Ma and I entered before. Perhaps there really is some danger ahead. Yarou Shangjuan's slightly worried voice came from behind. Zhuowen responded and continued forward. However, as Zhuowen moved forward, he also released his divine sense deep into the end of the passageway in front of him, always on guard. After walking for about a few hours, Zhuowen found that the passageway in front of him was beginning to become wider. Originally, the passageway was only about one person's width, but now, it had more than doubled in width. Moreover, on the void barrier on both sides of the passageway, green lights were lit one after another. These lights were very cold, without the slightest trace of warmth. Moreover, the moment these green lights were lit, the spacious passageway in front of them began to distort, becoming very irregular. Zhuowen stopped. He could see at a glance that the space-time of the void passageway in front of him was constantly changing. If they continued forward, these distorted space-time would turn into the most terrifying attacks, turning anything that entered into this space-time into powder. F***ck, they're trying to kill us. Even space-time is distorted, we are going to die. Ma Yujie's eyes widened, his voice became strange, and his expression was ugly. You didn't encounter this situation in the previous passageway? Zhuowen asked with a frown. Nonsense, of course not. We just encountered a beast with the strength of a creator. Even if I tried my best, I could barely pass through this kind of space-time distortion zone. Moreover, if the space-time distortion zone is very large, the risk of dying is very high. Ma Yujie's expression was solemn, his eyes flashing as he spoke. When the time comes, follow behind me. I have some understanding of the power of space-time, so I can find the corresponding foothold in this space-time distortion zone. After saying this, Zhuowen stared at the space-time distortion zone in front of him and began to deduce in his mind. Although these space-time distortions looked terrifying, as long as the pattern was found, it was still possible to pass through. Of course, if you were strong enough and did not fear the power of space-time distortion, there was no problem at all to barge through. However, the 4 people present did not have such strength, and even if they did, they would not use the method of barging through. Follow me. After about half an incense stick's time, Zhuowen suddenly took a step forward and entered the space-time distortion zone. Ma Yujie, Yarou Shangjuan, and Jiang Qisheng all looked nervously at Zhuowen's back. After discovering that Zhuowen had entered the space-time distortion zone and was unharmed, they all breathed a sigh of relief. They knew that Zhuowen should have found the real foothold in this space-time distortion zone. Without waiting for Zhuowen to call out, the 3 followed Zhuowen's footsteps and stepped into the place where Zhuowen was. Next, Zhuowen and the others walked very slowly. Zhuowen usually needed half an incense stick's worth of time to deduce a foothold, which meant that it would take them 5 incense sticks worth of time to walk 10 steps, which was equivalent to walking 10 steps in an entire afternoon. However, Zhuowen and the others were very patient, although they did not know how big this space-time distortion zone was. Chapter 30:18. Limestone chessboard. They had already been in the space-time distortion for 10 days. In these 10 days, they had only walked 480 steps, which was about 300 meters. At first, They thought that the distorted zone wouldn't be very big. But now, it seemed that the area of the distorted zone was beyond their expectations. If this distorted land was thousands of meters long, wouldn't it take them years to leave? Look, the space-time ahead doesn't seem to be distorted anymore. Suddenly, Ma Yujie pointed to the front and exclaimed. Zhuowen hurriedly looked over and saw that a normal passage had appeared about a kilometer away. Seeing that they were finally going to leave this place, the four of them perked up. A month later, Zhuowen's group of four finally left the distorted space and arrived at the normal tunnel. This passageway was not long, and the four of them only spent 2 days to reach the end of the passageway. At the end of the passageway was a stone room that was neither big nor small. There was basically nothing in this stone room. The only decoration was the green stone chessboard in the middle of the stone room. The strange thing was that the chessboard was empty. There was not a single chess piece. This stone chamber is sealed. In other words, this is the end of the passage. There is no other way. Ma Yujie walked around the stone room and frowned. He was a little depressed. Could it be that the void passages we found in both directions are not the correct exits? Jiang Qisheng smiled bitterly. Zhuowen observed the stone room and found that it was too ordinary. However, it was precisely because it was too ordinary that he was even more puzzled. Why would such an ordinary stone chamber be hidden in such a mysterious void passage? Moreover, the void passage had a space-time distortion zone. He had personally calculated the distortion of time and space. It was not a natural formation, but a man-made arrangement. Clearly, it was set up to stop intruders. Apart from that, it was obvious that someone had entered the void tunnel before, but there were no signs of them coming out. Moreover, the traces of entry were relatively new. It was obvious that the person had been in there for less than a month. Since that was the case, when they reached the end of the passage, they should be able to see the cultivator who had just entered this place. Even if that cultivator had died, there should be a corpse left behind. It was impossible for there to be no traces at all. However, Zhuowen had observed that whether it was on the road or inside the stone room, there were no traces of cultivators at all. So where did the people who came in first go? Thinking of this, Zhuowen's gaze fell on the green stone chessboard in the center. He found a strand of hair at the southeast corner of the chessboard. Zhuowen picked up the strand of hair and sniffed it. He smelled a refreshing fragrance. Clearly, this strand of hair belonged to a woman, and it had fallen here not long ago. If the hair was here, then where was the person? Brother Long, I suspect that there is something wrong with this chessboard. Ma Yujie came to Zhuowen's side and naturally saw the strand of hair in Zhuowen's hand. He took another look at the green stone chessboard and said in a deep voice. Zhuowen looked at Ma Yujie speechlessly. This fatty must have seen him pick up the strand of hair, and that was why he said that. When Ma Yujie entered the stone room, he didn't even look at the green stone chessboard. However, Zhuowen didn't care about Ma Yujie's belated advice. Instead, he put the strand of hair in the palm of his left hand and formed a seal with his right hand, beginning to use the art of heavenly divination. Speaking of which, after entering this place, Zhuowen had used the art of heavenly divination quite frequently. He had a serious feeling that his body was weaker than before. This weakness didn't come from his physical body, but from his perception of his own lifespan. After all, using the art of heavenly divination cost his lifespan. Zhuowen knew that if he wanted to solve the problem of his lifespan, he could only continue to advance his cultivation base and gain more lifespan. Fortunately, his original body had just advanced to an eternal overlord, so his lifespan had been replenished quite a bit. That was why he had been using the art of heavenly divination repeatedly. This strand of hair belongs to Zhongli Haoyang, and I've calculated that this is the real exit. The key is indeed this green stone chessboard, Zhuowen said. How can this chessboard help us leave this place? I don't see anything special about it. Jiang Qisheng circled around the chessboard, his eyes full of puzzlement. Ma Yujie, on the other hand, calmly circled around the chessboard 3 times. Then, he pretended to sit at the side and shook his head. If I'm not wrong, this chessboard should be the foundation of a formation. To be more precise, it should be the foundation of a teleportation formation. The chess pieces on this chessboard should be the key to activating the chessboard. Zhuowen interjected. Chess pieces? But there's no chess piece on this chessboard at all. Jiang Qisheng glanced at the chessboard, his eyes even more puzzled. Yarou Xiangjuan was also puzzled. They didn't know much about formations. Even if Zhuowen and Ma Yujie said that this was a formation, they only knew a little about it at most. I'm afraid the chess pieces were taken by someone who came here first. Ma Yujie suddenly cursed the person who took the chess pieces for being immoral. Zhuowen also agreed with Ma Yujie's guess. In the process of his deduction, he had indeed deduced this matter. Which one of you has jade stones? The higher the grade, the better, Zhuowen said to Ma Yujie and the others. What do you want jade stones for? Ma Yujie asked, puzzled. The chess pieces on this chessboard are refined using jade stones. I plan to refine the chess pieces and place them on this chessboard to completely perfect this formation. When the time comes, we can use this teleportation formation. Zhuowen's eyes were calm. Just now, in the divination of the heavenly divination technique, he saw the vague shadow of a person activating the formation in front of the chessboard. Although he couldn't see the figure clearly, he could see the positions of the chess pieces on the chessboard clearly. He guessed that if he could restore the positions of the chess pieces on the chessboard, he might be able to restore the formation that existed in this chessboard. I have a lot of jade stones here. Ma Yujie quickly took out a pile of jade stones from his spirit ring. Seeing these jade stones, Zhuowen's face suddenly became gloomy. This was because the jade stones that Ma Yujie took out were ordinary, the kind from the mortal world that didn't have much energy at all. Do you have any creation-grade jade stones? Zhuowen asked in a low voice. He felt that the formation of this chessboard was at least of the creation grade, so the jade stones used to make the chess pieces had to be creation grade at least. Creation grade jade stones? Why don't you go rob someone? How could I have them? Ma Yujie put away the jade stones and said unhappily. I know you must have them. This is the key to leaving this place and going to the place where Gonggong's body is stored. Are you sure you don't want to contribute some creation-grade jade stones? Of course, if you don't want to, I won't force you, Zhuowen said with a shrug. Damn it. Ma Yujie had no choice but to fiddle around in his spirit ring for a while and take out a bag of jade stones to give to Zhuowen. Chapter 30:19. Enter. I'll refine the chess pieces first. During this process, you'd better not disturb me, Zhuowen said, then went to a remote corner of the stone room. He poured out all the jade stones from the cloth bag and began to refine them one by one. Jiang Qisheng, Ma Yujie, and Yarou Xiangjuan naturally nodded. Even if Zhuowen hadn't said anything, they wouldn't have bothered Zhuowen. Zhuowen meticulously refined the jade stones into sparkling and translucent chess pieces. There were a total of 361 chess pieces on the chessboard, but Zhuowen didn't refine 361 chess pieces. He only refined 200 of them. Relying on the art of divine calculation, he already knew the positions of the chess pieces on the chessboard and knew that there were only 200 chess pieces on the board. Zhuowen spent 6 hours and finally refined 200 chess pieces. Brother Long, do you know how to arrange these chess pieces? Yarou Xiangjuan asked the question in her heart. I know. Just watch. Zhuowen put away the chess pieces and went to the chessboard. Immediately, he began to arrange the chess pieces in an orderly manner on the chessboard. Ma Yujie and the others watched silently with furrowed brows. They didn't know much about chess, so they were a little confused. Even Zhuowen didn't know much about chess, so he didn't know much about the arrangement of the chess pieces in his calculation. He only knew how to follow the instructions. Soon, Zhuowen had arranged all 200 chess pieces on the chessboard. A powerful aura surged out from the chessboard, as if a giant dragon had just awakened from its slumber. What a mysterious aura. This chessboard seems to be alive. Zhuowen, Ma Yujie, and the others couldn't help but take a few steps back when this aura swept out. They looked at the green stone chessboard in amazement. At this moment, the surface of the green stone chessboard was emitting a green light. The chess pieces arranged on the chessboard began to connect together. Soon after, A green line appeared on the surface of each chess piece. A total of 200 lines rushed out of the chessboard and intertwined in the air above the chessboard. These lines began to form and combine, forming a green formation. The surface of the formation was covered with dense patterns. These patterns revealed an ancient and vicissitude aura. From this, one could tell that this formation was definitely not ordinary. This should be a teleportation array, but it's not the teleportation array of our era. The method of setting up the array is very ancient, and is rarely seen in our era. Ma Yujie carefully observed the formation that appeared above and explained in a low voice. Zhuowen nodded. He knew that Ma Yujie's attainments in the Tao of arrays were much higher than his. He could also see what the latter had said. Let's go. Let's go in. Zhuowen was the first to enter the array, followed by Ma Yujie, Yaro Shangjuan, and Jiang Qisheng. However, the moment they entered the formation, Zhuowen immediately discovered that the teleportation process was actually very slow. This is probably the first generation of teleportation arrays. Each teleportation takes at least several hours. Ma Yujie fell into the formation and quickly noticed the abnormality. He said with a gloomy gaze, "It doesn't matter. We just need to wait in this formation for a few hours." Zhuowen did not mind. Just as Ma Yujie said, the formation was finally completely activated after several hours, and the four of them gradually disappeared into the formation. When Zhuowen opened his eyes again, what entered his eyes were endless ruins. At the end of the ruins, Zhuowen saw a huge figure lying in the void. "We're here." Ma Yujie looked at the huge figure with unconcealable excitement in his eyes. That should be the physical body of ancestral shaman Gong Gong. Yaro Xiangjuan and Jiang Qisheng's gazes also fell on the huge figure, their bodies trembling with excitement. "There's someone there." Zhuowen's gaze fell below the huge figure. He saw several figures, but because they were too far away, he could not see clearly, so he could not recognize who they were. "I'm afraid it's the cultivators who came in before us. It should be Zhongli, Hao Yang, Yi Chidong, and the others. Of course, the Phoenix People's Saintess and Moses should be there too," Jiang Qisheng said. "Let's go and take a look," Zhuowen said and led the three of them forward. This space was not big, and it was surrounded by a zone of nothingness. There was nothing in it. In this space, the only thing that existed was the huge corpse of Gong Gong floating in the void. Below Gong Gong's corpse was a huge square carved from white marble. There were 12 huge white stone pillars in the square, and in the center of the square surrounded by the 12 stone pillars was a rather huge altar. The altar was circular and had 3 levels in total. At the top of the altar, there were many bone flags. These bone flags fluttered in the wind, and a mysterious aura drifted out. There was a layer of light blue energy barrier around the square. At this moment, there were more than 10 figures standing outside the square. These figures were divided into 2 groups and stood on both sides of the square, faintly showing signs of confrontation. Among them, the smaller group was the human clan. There were only about 5 of them. Among the 5, Zhuowen had only seen the 2 leaders, Zhongli Hao Yang and Yi Qidong. As for the other 3, Zhuowen did not know them at all. The number of people from the other clan was twice that of the human clan. There were 10 of them, and the leaders were the Phoenix People's Saintess and Moses. "Saintess, what do you mean by this? Do you plan to fight us outside the square?" Zhongli Hao Yang's beautiful eyes fell on the veiled Phoenix People's Saintess, and her voice was as cold as winter. "The body of ancestral which Gong Gong is ours. You have no right to touch it." The Phoenix People's Saintess said arrogantly. Zhongli Hao Yang sneered and said, "You do have the advantage in numbers, but you're still lacking if you want to take us down. Also, you other clan are not good at formations. You think you can break the defensive formation on the surface of the square?" At this point, Zhongli Hao Yang's mouth was full of mockery. Sure enough, after hearing this, the Phoenix People's Saintess frowned and fell silent. Moses, who was standing beside the Phoenix People's Saintess, had a fierce look in his eyes. He said coldly, "We'll cripple you and make you our slaves. Do you dare not break the formation for us? Moses, you're very arrogant. Do you really think that the human clan is easy to bully?" Yi Chidong was so angry that he laughed. He stepped forward and looked coldly at Moses. He continued, "Do you have the guts to fight me? Hee. Why wouldn't I?" Chapter 30:20. Cooperation. Speaking of which, Moses had always looked down on the human race. He felt that the gap between the human race and the alien race was too great. Yi Chidong's cultivation was indeed not bad, and after entering the door of darkness, he had even broken through to the peak of the creator stage by chance. However, Moses didn't think much of it. He was also a peak creator stage expert, and one with a powerful bloodline at that. His strength far exceeded that of the peak creator stage experts of the human race. In front of him, this Yi Chi tunnel was really nothing. Bang bang bang. In just an instant, Moses and Yi Chidong collided, and then separated. Moses landed on the ground and looked at Yi Chidong, who had also landed in front of him. His gaze became very serious. "You're just a human. How can you be so powerful? You're actually on par with me." Moses's eyes flashed fiercely. "Don't think that only you alien races can be invincible in the same realm. Don't look down on others." Yi Chidong's gaze was cold, and his voice was calm. Moses looked deeply at Yi Chidong and smiled faintly. "Just now, you clashed head-on with me. You must have suffered some injuries. Haha, then you and I can fight again and see if it's what you think it is," Yi Chidong said unconcernedly. Moses fell silent. Just now, when he clashed with Yi Chidong, he felt that Yi Chidong should have fallen into a slight disadvantage. He guessed that Yi Chidong must have suffered some injuries, but Yi Chidong had forcibly suppressed them. Of course, this was purely his guess. If Yi Chidong wasn't injured and he attacked again, it wouldn't be good. He definitely wouldn't be able to defeat Yi Chidong in a short time. Just as Zhongli Haoyang said, there weren't many alien races who understood formations, and they didn't know much about the formations around the square. If they relied on them to break the formations, it would probably take forever. Thus, they still had to rely on Zhongli Haoyang's help. This was because they remembered that the genius of the Scarlet Heaven Sword Tower, Sichu Liangji, on Zhongli Haoyang's side was a creator stage divine array master. He was more proficient in formations than anyone here. If the foreign races could completely crush the human race and suppress the human race, they could teach the human a lesson and capture Sichu Liangji alive to help them break the formation. Unfortunately, even though the human race had fewer people than the foreign race, they weren't much weaker. Once the two sides started fighting, they would have to pay a huge price. It was obviously not worth it. Just as Yi Chidong and Moses were about to draw their swords, the Phoenix People's Holy Maiden suddenly opened her mouth and said, "There's no need for the two of you to harm each other. Our humankind and the non-human kind are still allies, so we naturally need to work together and help each other. We have to work together to completely break this formation. Otherwise, it will be difficult for any of us to succeed." Zhongli Haoyan sneered and said, "Didn't the Holy Maiden arrogantly say that she wanted to cripple all of us and make us your slaves, and then unconditionally break the formation for you? What happened now? Are you admitting defeat?" The Phoenix People's Holy Maiden frowned. She didn't like Zhongli Haoyang's tone and shook her head. "I was just joking. Now that the human race and the non-human kind are still allies, we have to work together, right? Hee. Do you really think that our humankind and the non-human kind are allies?" Suddenly, a clear voice full of sarcasm sounded, attracting the attention of the humans and non-human kind outside the square. The Phoenix People's Holy Maiden, Zhongli Haoyang, and the others all looked in the direction of the voice and saw 4 people walking towards them. The person in the lead was a young man with 2 scars on his face, and there were 3 people behind him. One of them was an extremely fat man who attracted a lot of attention. Other than the fat man, the other 2 were a man and a woman, and the voice just now was naturally from the woman. "You must be Junior Marshal Sister Yarrow from the Heaven and Earth Divine Sec." Zhongli Haoyang's beautiful eyes fell on Yarrow Xiangjuan, and she couldn't help but exclaim with joy. The human race had too few people, so they were at a disadvantage against the non-human kind. However, with the addition of Zhuowen's group, they were more confident. The Phoenix People's Holy Maiden and Moses also saw Zhuowen's group of 4, and their brows furrowed slightly. I didn't think that senior martial sister Zhongli would still remember me. I'm so happy. Yarou Shengjuan bowed towards Zhongli Haoyang. Zhongli Haoyang immediately helped Yarou Shengjuan up and hurriedly told them not to be overly courteous. Then, Zhongli Haoyang looked at Zhuowen and said, I remember that you're called Long Wen, right? Zhuowen glanced at Zhongli Haoyang and nodded, that's right, Miss Zhongli's memory is indeed outstanding. I'm impressed. Zhongli Haoyang smiled slightly and didn't mind Zhuowen's slightly flattering words. Instead, she said in a deep voice, when I was in the Starry Sky Tower, I accidentally saw a name on the Starry Sky contribution list. I remember that name was also called Long Wen. In a short time, this name soared from the 70s to the 35th place. At that time, I was quite curious about this Long Wen. I just don't know if that Long Wen is you. Zhuowen smiled slightly and said, what do you think, Miss Zhongli? Hehe, it should be you. Zhongli Haoyang smiled faintly. Zhuowen nodded and didn't deny it. Back then, the name he had engraved on the Starry Sky token was Long Wen. The reason why his ranking soared so quickly was probably because he had killed Sauron at that time. That was why he had obtained so many points, causing his ranking to soar. At this moment, Yi Qidong also came to Jiang Qisheng's side and said something to him. Seeing the two of them talking and laughing, they should be reminiscing about the past. Right, who is this person? Suddenly, Zhongli Haoyang's beautiful eyes fell on Ma Yujie, who was behind Zhuowen, and a trace of doubt appeared on her face. She knew most of the human cultivators who entered the Door of Darkness, but this fatty in front of her was extremely unfamiliar to her. She had no impression of him at all. This fat lord is called Ma Yujie, a rogue cultivator. In the future, if you follow this fat lord, you will be able to eat and drink well. Ma Yujie patted his chest and said. Zhongli Haoyang smiled slightly and ignored Ma Yujie. Obviously, she thought this fatty was bragging. Of course, only Zhuowen knew that Ma Yujie wasn't bragging. This fatty's origin was too mysterious, especially the ancient era that the fatty mentioned. This made Zhuowen very curious. What kind of place was that? Chapter 30:21. Probe formation. On the human side, apart from Zhongli and Haoyang, no one else spoke to Zhuowen, including Yi Qidong. They didn't even greet Zhuowen. Zhuowen deliberately saw the contempt in the eyes of the other humans. Clearly, the eternal overlord aura he revealed was too weak, so they didn't care too much. Yarou Shengjuan and Jiang Qisheng were more popular than Zhuowen and Ma Yujie. A few people often went over to talk to them. Jiang Qisheng's cultivation level was at the mid-stage of the Genesis Overlord realm. Although it wasn't very high in this team, he was still a Genesis Overlord and naturally received the approval of the others. As for Yarou Shengjuan, although she was only an eternal overlord, she was simply too beautiful. Her beauty could cause the downfall of nations. Even third-step Dao Vindication cultivators would have a good impression of her and try to get close to her. Zhuowen didn't care about the other people's attitude towards him. His gaze had already landed on the foreign race team opposite him. The veiled holy maiden of the Phoenix people couldn't help but narrow his eyes slightly. The Phoenix people's holy maiden also noticed Zhuowen's gaze. She glanced at Zhuowen and frowned slightly. Clearly, she was a little dissatisfied with the way Zhuowen was looking at her. Little bastard, if you look at our holy maiden again, do you believe that I won't beat the shit out of you? Moses stood in front of the Phoenix people's holy maiden and looked at Zhuowen with an unfriendly scarlet gaze. He didn't hide his murderous intent towards Zhuowen. Little bastard, who are you scolding? Zhuowen mocked. Zhuowen didn't give Moses any face. Moses was certain that Zhuowen had killed Zorro. Before entering the Door of Darkness, Moses had threatened Zhuowen that he would kill Zhuowen in the Door of Darkness. The two of them were already in a state of irreconcilable hatred. If Zhuowen still gave him any face, he would really be despicable. Of course I'm scolding you, Moses blurted out. However, he quickly realized that something was wrong. Long Wen had actually set a trap for him. You're courting death. Moses's face instantly turned ugly. He stomped his right foot and charged towards Zhuowen. However, the instant Moses arrived at Zhuowen's side, Zhongli Haoyang had already made her move. Her palm blasted out like a fuse. Zhuowen saw with his own eyes that the instant Zhongli Haoyang's jade-like palm landed on Moses's fist, a very mysterious sparkling light erupted. Moses gave a muffled groan as he was sent flying backward. He forcibly twisted his body in midair and barely managed to stop himself in the middle of the non-humankind army. However, the moment Moses landed on the ground, he staggered a little and his cheeks flushed red. Moses looked at Zhongli Haoyang with fear. The latter's strength had shocked him. She was actually stronger than Yi Qi-dong, and not just by a little, but by a lot. Zhuowen silently looked at Zhongli Haoyang's back, his gaze very solemn. The energy that Zhongli Haoyang had unleashed in that instant had caused him to be extremely fearful. It was as if he hadn't faced a lord of creation but a genuine lord of creation cultivator. However, he knew that Zhongli Haoyang couldn't possibly be a lord of creation. She should be around the half-step lord of creation. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to enter the door of darkness. From this, it could be seen how terrifying Zhongli Haoyang's battle prowess was. It was still somewhat beyond Zhuowen's expectations. Even the Phoenix people's holy maiden's expression became much more serious. She looked deeply at Zhongli Haoyang as if she wanted to see through her. As expected of the #1 genius on the universal contribution ranking, Zhuowen muttered to himself. He felt that Zhongli Haoyang was indeed amazing. Even he couldn't help but admire her talent. Zhongli Haoyang, what is the meaning of this? Moses stabilized himself and suppressed the anger in his chest as he growled at Zhongli Haoyang. Zhongli Haoyang looked at Moses indifferently and said, "You attacked our friend without any reason, and now you're asking me what I mean? Don't you think your question is very idiotic? This kid doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He actually dared to humiliate me. What's wrong with me teaching him a lesson?" Moses said angrily, "You attacked my friend, so why can't I help my friend?" Zhongli Haoyang sneered. Moses fell silent. Zhongli Haoyang was right. From Zhongli Haoyang's point of view, helping Long Wen was a matter of course. However, Moses was very indignant. He knew that Long Wen was Sauron's murderer. Right now, he wanted nothing more than to tear this person to pieces to vent his anger. However, he knew that he couldn't do it now. I can only wait for this kid to be alone before I capture him. At that time, I'll make him suffer a fate worse than death, Moses thought to himself. He calmed down and returned to the alien race team. He didn't say anything else. Hihi, Moses was too impulsive just now. I apologize to Miss Zhongli here. Next, let's discuss how to break this formation and enter the square. That's the right way. The holy maiden of the Phoenix people smiled and bowed to Zhongli Haoyang. However, she completely ignored the victim this time, Zhuowen. Zhongli Haoyang's anger had also subsided. She nodded and said, "It's fine. The array formation in this plaza is of a high level. Among us, only Brother Situ knows about arrays. He's also a god of creation stage array formation master. Let him take a look. Then we'll have to trouble Miss Zhongli. If there's anything we can do for you, just let us know," the holy maiden of the Phoenix people said with a smile. "Let's see what Brother Situ has to say first." Zhongli Haoyang shook her head and immediately looked at the handsome man standing on the other side. This man was about 30 years old. He was mature and steady. He wore a long white robe and had a very pretentious demeanor. This man was Situ Liangji. When he saw Zhongli Haoyang looking at him, he nodded slightly with a hint of arrogance in his eyes. Situ Liangji walked slowly to the edge of the plaza. With a wave of his sleeve, more than 10 array flags were summoned and surrounded him. "When I'm exploring the array formation, no one is allowed to disturb me." After saying that, Situ Liangji formed a seal with his hands and closed his eyes. He began to carefully explore the array formation in this plaza. Mysterious ripples spread out from the array flags around Situ Liangji. Zhongli Haoyang and the holy maiden of the Phoenix people led their own people and retreated 100 meters. They tried their best not to disturb Situ Liangji's exploration of the array formation. Zhuowen looked at Situ Liangji's exploration of the array formation and could not help but shake his head secretly. Situ Liangji's exploration of the array formation was not wrong, but the direction was wrong. The array formation outside this plaza did look like a defensive array. However, if one observed it carefully, they could see that the array formation was actually changing. In essence, this array formation was not a defensive array. It was a terrifying and powerful killing array. Moreover, there were traces of a trapping array in the changes of the killing array. If Shuowen's guess was right, this should be a powerful trapping array. Situ Liangji's exploration of the array formation was in the direction of the defensive array. This was completely wrong. However, Zhuowen did not speak. He knew that if he spoke now, he would definitely be dissatisfied with Zhongli, Haoyang and the others. Moses would even have an excuse to deal with him. Although he was not afraid of Moses, after all, his doppelganger was still cultivating in the macro world. With the strength of his original body, there was still a big gap between him and Moses. My doppelganger should be advancing soon. As long as it advances, I will not be afraid of anyone here. Chapter 30-22. Fatty attracting hatred. Ma Yujie, who was standing beside Zhuowen, couldn't help but sneer when he saw Situ Liangji's technique. However, Situ Liangji still restrained himself. Otherwise, he might have attracted the attention of Zhongli, Haoyang, and the others. 4 hours later, Situ Liangji waved his sleeves and collected the array flags. He stood up with a solemn expression. "Brother Situ, how is it?" Zhongli, Haoyang, and Yi Qi-dong hurried over when they saw the solemn expression on Situ Liangji's face. Zhongli, Haoyang, even asked. On the other side, the Phoenix People's holy maiden, Moses, and the others also came over. They wanted to hear what Situ Liangji had to say. Situ Liangji let out a sigh of relief. He immediately said in a deep voice, "The great formation around this square is not simple. Just now, I checked it and found that the weak points of this great defensive formation are scattered. I'm afraid it won't be easy to find the weak points of this great defensive formation in a short time." Zhongli, Haoyang, the Phoenix People's holy maiden, and the others were slightly disappointed when they heard Situ Liangji's words. "It's fine. This array is not simple. Brother Situ, you don't have to feel burdened. We will discuss it again after you rest for a while," Zhongli, Haoyang, said with a smile. Situ Liangji's eyes were calm. He said, "This array is not as difficult as you think. As long as I have enough time, it is only a matter of time before I can break it." Zhongli, Haoyang, the Phoenix People's holy maiden, and the others' eyes lit up. "I will rest for a while. After I recover, I will try again," Situ Liangji said to Zhongli, Haoyang, and Yi Qi-dong. He ignored the others and took out a futon. He sat down cross-legged to recover. Probing an array required a divine array master to use his mental energy and divine sense to check the path and direction of the array. It was a very tiring method. Zhongli, Haoyang, and the others knew how tiring it was to probe the array. They didn't disturb Situ Liangji's recovery. Ma Yujie looked on coldly from the sidelines. He chuckled and said in a low voice, "You've gone in the wrong direction from the beginning. No matter how hard you try, how can you possibly break the formation?" Ma Yujie's voice was as soft as possible, but Situ Liangji's hearing was obviously good. His ears twitched, and he immediately opened his eyes. He looked coldly at Ma Yujie and said, "What did you just say?" Situ Liangji's shout was very loud, which immediately attracted the attention of both the humankind and the non-humankind. Zhongli, Haoyang, and Yi Qi-dong also looked over in confusion. The two of them had been rather far away earlier, so although they had heard Ma Yujie's voice, they had not clearly heard what Ma Yujie had said. Now that Situ Liangji had shouted, it naturally attracted the attention of the two of them. Ma Yujie cast a sidelong glance at Situ Liangji, but he was not afraid at all. Instead, he coldly looked back at Situ Liangji and said, "What? I'm just complaining. Are you complaining about me? Don't think I don't know." Situ Liangji's gaze was very unfriendly. He looked at Ma Yujie, and his tone was as cold as the winter. Ma Yujie shrugged and said, "What I said is indeed the truth. When you were exploring the formation, you did indeed go in the wrong direction. Among those present, not only did I see it, but this Long Wen beside me should also have seen it. Ma Yujie very immorally betrayed Zhuowen, and he pointed at Zhuowen beside him and chuckled. Zhuowen was speechless. This damn fatty was really as sinister as before. He actually dragged him into the water without saying anything. It has nothing to do with me. It was this fatty who said it. I didn't say you went in the wrong direction. Zhuowen hurriedly waved his hand. Sichu Liangji glared at Zhuowen. Obviously, he also hated the latter. The two of you were originally in the same group. Our team kindly accepted you, but you came to belittle me like this. Sichu Liangji said furiously. Zhongli Haoyang hurriedly came over to smooth things over and said, Brother Sichu, they should be unintentional as well. Don't take it to heart too much. Sichu Liangji sucked in a deep breath and said to Zhongli Haoyang, Haoyang, I know that you're kind-hearted. Similarly of the human race, accepting them is actually nothing much. But this fatty and this knife-scarred man seriously don't know the immensity of heaven and earth, to actually point fingers at me. Could it be that they are formation path god masters too? Furthermore, even if they are indeed formation path god masters, how high can their standards be? Coming over and pointing at me, who the hell do they think they are? Sichu Liangji jabbered on endlessly, faintly showing signs of not giving up. Zhongli Haoyang was rather embarrassed. Rather, it was Ma Yujie this fatty who was not afraid in the slightest, retorting sarcastically, You don't say, I'm a formation path god master. I'm much more superior than you, this dabbler. Ma Yujie this guy's ability to pull aggro was getting stronger and stronger. This sentence thoroughly infuriated Sichu Liangji. Sichu Liangji suddenly stood up and said to Zhongli Haoyang, Haoyang, today, I'm irreconcilable with these two people. If you don't chase these two people away today, then I'll leave myself. Zhongli Haoyang had a headache. How did things develop to this point? Zhuowen also had a lot of headache, glaring fiercely at Ma Yujie. It was fine if this fatty pulled aggro himself, but he actually even pulled aggro onto him. It was seriously too much of a scam. You can get lost already. How can your bit of formation path standards break this array formation? Ma Yujie boasted shamelessly. Zhongli Haoyang said coldly, Enough, have you said enough? Brother Sichu is our only creation-level formation path god master here. Your tone is also a little too big, right? Zhongli Haoyang's words were said to Ma Yujie. Clearly, she started to show her might, targeting Ma Yujie this fellow. After all, this fatty's mouth was seriously too smelly, daring to say anything. Yo, big sister, are you trying to chase me away? Let me tell you, if you chase me away, that's the biggest mistake of your life. This array formation might not be able to break this trash at all, but to me, that's a small problem that's easily solved. After Ma Yujie finished speaking, he even shook his head feeling good about himself and winked that pair of small eyes at Zhongli Haoyang. Zhongli Haoyang's face was full of black lines. Forcefully suppressing the anger in her heart, she said coldly, I didn't have the intention of chasing you away, but want you to shut up. Don't tell me you don't have ears. Sichu Liangji stood behind Zhongli Haoyang and said with a sneer, Haoyang, this damn fatty actually said that he can easily break this array formation. This is simply a joke. Do you really think that he's a creation level or even higher formation path godmaster? At least much better than you, this trash. Ma Yujie shrugged and said. Chapter 3023. Demand haha. Do I have to break through the formation just because you asked me to? Wouldn't that make me lose face? Ma Yujie crossed his arms before his chest and gazed at Sichu Liangji in a calm and composed manner, and the disdain and contempt in his eyes were extremely dense. Haha. You said you can break through the formation, yet you refuse to do so now. Your lies are really worthless. Sichu Liangji started laughing from extreme anger, and then he gazed at Zhongli Haoyang and said, Haoyang, he's an arrogant person. You should drive him away now. Of course, if you're too embarrassed to make a move, then I can do it. I won't take anyone's life, but you probably won't say anything if I cripple him, right? As he spoke, Sichu Liangji walked slowly towards Ma Yujie, and the killing intent in his eyes seemed material and wasn't concealed in the slightest. Who said I won't break through the formation? I'm just saying that you don't have the qualifications to make me break through the formation. Ma Yujie didn't care about Sichu Liangji, who came over aggressively, and he still courted death as he said, how about this? I'll barely join forces with Long when to break through the formation today. If we're able to break through the formation, then you can just kneel before me and call me and Long when grandpa, and then kowtow 3 times. How about it? Sichu Liangji stopped moving and gazed at Ma Yujie as if he was looking at an idiot, and then he said coldly, is there even a need to compete? You'll definitely lose. If you lose, then you have to call me grandpa 3 times and crawl between my legs. Haha. Of course. Ma Yujie strode forward arrogantly and arrived by Sichu Liangji's side, and then he patted the latter on the shoulder and said earnestly, be prepared to call me grandpa. As soon as he finished speaking, the fatty gestured towards Zhu Wen and said, Brother Zhuo, let's break through the formation together. Zhu Wen was slightly speechless, and he said in a low voice, there's no benefit in making him call me grandpa. I won't do that. As soon as Zhu Wen said that, Sichu Liangji almost fainted. He thought that this guy was a man of few words, but it was said that his words were even more annoying than this fatty's. Ma Yujie smiled cunningly as if he already knew that Zhu Wen would say this. He looked at Zhongli, Hao Yang, and the saintess of the Phoenix people and chuckled. You two should be the leaders of the human and non-human teams respectively, right? Zhongli, Hao Yang and the Phoenix people's saintess looked at Ma Yujie at the same time. Their brows furrowed slightly. They didn't know what this fatty was trying to say. What's wrong? Could it be that you have other requests to break the formation? The saintess of the Phoenix people said coldly. Could it be? Could it be that I'm going to break the formation for free while the two of us work ourselves to death to break the formation without any benefits? Ma Yujie said with a faint smile. Zhongli Hao Yang was obviously more reasonable than the saintess of the Phoenix people. She said in a low voice, as long as you can really break the formation in a short time, I can fulfill one of your requests. Haha, I like how straightforward you are, unlike some people who are so stingy. They are a disgrace to the non-human race. Ma Yujie said with a hidden meaning. The saintess of the Phoenix people's saintess didn't look too good. She said coldly, if you can really break the formation, I'll do the same thing as Zhongli Hao Yang and fulfill one of your requests. However, if you can't break the formation, then don't blame me for holding you accountable. Even if you, Zhongli Hao Yang, make a move, I won't let them off easily. Hihi, of course. My request is actually very simple. After we break the formation, we want to be the first to enter the altar. Ma Yujie said calmly. You want to be the first to enter? The saintess of the Phoenix people frowned slightly. Zhongli Hao Yang didn't look too good either, but she didn't say anything. That's right, we only have one request. If you can fulfill it, then we can immediately begin to break the formation. Of course, we won't be like that Sichu something trash who can't even do a good job of scouting the formation. Ma Yujie said calmly. You, Sichu Liangji was furious. This damn fatty's mouth was too vicious. He really wanted to tear his mouth apart. I agree. Zhongli Hao Yang said. I agree too. The saintess of the Phoenix people hesitated for a while, then nodded in agreement. The non-human race couldn't do anything about the formation outside the square. If the formation couldn't be broken, then Gong Gong's body would be nothing more than a mirage. Hee, Brother Long, come and help me. I'll scout the formation first. Ma Yujie revealed a cunning smile. He turned around, waved his right hand, and dozens of formation flags appeared. He began to scout the formation. Zhuo Wen finally understood Ma Yujie's goal. It turned out that he wanted to enter the altar first. Although it didn't matter to Zhuo Wen whether he entered the altar first or later, entering the altar first would naturally give him an advantage. After all, in addition to the blood essence in Gong Gong's body, there might be other treasures beside it. Everyone knew the principle of first come, first served. Seeing Ma Yujie pretending to take out formation flags to scout the formation, Sichu Liangji snorted coldly, but his eyes were fixed on Ma Yujie's movements. However, when he saw Ma Yujie using the method of trapping and killing formations to scout the formation, he couldn't help but laugh loudly and say, "Damn fatty, are you crazy? This is obviously a defensive formation. How can you use the method of trapping and killing formations to scout the formation? Are you courting death?" Zhongli, Hao Yang, and the others stared at each other with wide eyes, revealing doubtful expressions. Although they weren't divine array masters, they had some knowledge about formations. The formation on the square was indeed a defensive formation. It didn't look like a trapping or killing formation at all. This fatty actually used the method of trapping and killing formations to scout the formation. Wasn't he going in the wrong direction? "Shut up, you idiot. What do you know?" Ma Yujie turned his head and scolded Sichu Liangji. Then, he straightened his posture and continued to scout the formation. Sichu Liangji was furious. When he wanted to rush out and attack Ma Yujie, he was stopped by Zhongli, Hao Yang. "Hao Yang, do you believe this damn fatty? This guy doesn't understand formations at all. He keeps slandering me. How can I stand it?" Sichu Liangji shouted angrily when he saw Zhongli. Hao Yang stopped him. Zhongli, Hao Yang, shook her head and said in a deep voice, "Let's continue watching." Sichu Liangji had no choice but to give up. However, when he looked at Ma Yujie, the murderous intent in his eyes became even more intense. Ma Yujie just sneered and ignored Sichu Liangji. After 2 hours, Ma Yujie suddenly changed the seal with his hands. The formation flags around him rushed out and turned into many directions, rushing into the formation at the edge of the square. Swoosh, swoosh. The moment these array flags entered the array, the entire array barrier began to tremble. Soon after, a sharp killing intent surged out from the array. Chapter 30-24. Fatty shows his prowess. Long when Ma Yujie opened his eyes and shouted at Zhuowen. Zhuowen nodded and waved his sleeve to summon 9 beast bone array discs. He threw out the array flags and the murderous spirit was suppressed by Zhuowen's array flags. Ma Yujie took advantage of this opportunity to stand up and take a few steps back. Bang! Zhuowen also took a few steps back. The murderous spirit burst out and blasted Zhuowen's 9 beast bone array discs away. At this moment, the array that was originally restrained became violent. The murderous spirit raged like a storm. Zhongli, Hao Yang and the others also noticed the sudden appearance of the murderous spirit. Naturally, they retreated and stayed away from the array. Is this really a trap and kill array? Zhongli, Hao Yang stared blankly at the formation that had suddenly gone berserk, and she spoke with slight disbelief. Sichu Liangji's expression changed drastically. He stared at the array and was so scared that he could not help but step back. But soon, Sichu Liangji came back to his senses. His face was extremely gloomy. He looked at Ma Yujie's back and his eyes flickered. No one knew what he was thinking. I have said just now that this idiot explored the array in the wrong direction. But this idiot just did not believe me and said that I was slandering him. Ma Yujie let out a long breath and laughed evilly. From time to time, he would glance at Sichu Liangji, who was not far away and did not look good. "Humph. You have just explored the real array. As for whether you can break this array, it is still unknown. Don't be complacent too early." Although Sichu Liangji's skills were not good, he was a genuine divine array master at the Genesis level. He could tell at a glance that the array in front of him was not an ordinary Genesis level array. Moreover, this trap and kill array was an array within an array. It was not that simple. "You don't have to worry about it." Ma Yujie shrugged and strode toward the array. At the same time, he took out one array flag after another from his spiritual ring. He actually took out 108 array flags in one go. These array flags were arranged around Ma Yujie's body like stars revolving around him. Bang! The murderous intent on the surface of the formation was blocked by the 108 formation flags. "Brother Zhuo, I'll help you fend off these murderous intents. Go and find the array base of this formation. As long as you find the array base, we can work together to completely break this formation," said Ma Yujie. Zhuowen knew Ma Yujie's intention. He followed behind Ma Yujie and at the same time, he used the infinity of primordial chaos to deduce the approximate location of the array and the key points of the array. With Ma Yujie blocking in front, Zhuowen's search for the array base went exceptionally smoothly. In just an hour, he found the array base of the killing array. I've already found the killing array's foundation. Everyone, attack this place together. Zhuowen pointed with his right hand, pointing out the position of the array foundation of the array formation, and shouted to Zhongli, Hao Yang, and the others. Let's attack together. Zhongli and Hao Yang hurriedly joined forces with Yi Qidong and the others, attacking together in the direction that Zhuowen had pointed out. The Phoenix People's Saintess did not dare to be negligent. She commanded everyone to attack together. Bang! 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 Terrifying attacks blasted out one after another, landing on the position that Zhuowen had pointed out. Immediately, the array shook violently and collapsed. After the formation collapsed, the terrifying murderous intents immediately dissipated. We've already broken the formation, Zhongli and Hao Yang said excitedly. Not yet. We've only broken the killing array. There's still a trapping array within, Zhuowen said calmly and continued to use the infinity of primordial chaos to explore the entire formation. Zhongli, Hao Yang, and the others all calmed down. They also saw that other than the murderous intents dissipating, the barrier had yet to disappear. After several hours, Zhuowen finally made a move and pointed out another direction. Zhongli, Hao Yang, and the others did not dare to be negligent. They all attacked together in that direction. After a while, the last trapping array was completely destroyed. The invisible barrier that had appeared at the edge of the square finally shattered and collapsed. We've finally broken the formation, Zhongli and Hao Yang revealed a trace of an excited smile. Even Yi Qidong, who was serious in speech and manner, revealed a relaxed smile. Ma Yujie also revealed a relaxed expression. He immediately looked at Sichu Liangji with a mocking gaze. Sichu Liangji also saw Ma Yujie's gaze and his face turned green. I say, come to Grandpa's side. Kowtow to your grandpa 3 times. Ma Yujie hurriedly waved at Sichu Liangji, causing Sichu Liangji, who originally wanted to retreat, to change his expression greatly. His eyes were filled with anger. Damn fatty, aren't you going too far? Have you been playing with me from the beginning? Sichu Liangji glared at Ma Yujie, his tone gloomy and terrifying. What? Are you going back on your word? Ma Yujie's eyes darkened as he said casually. You were the one who set a trap for me to kneel down to you. Don't even think about it. Sichu Liangji sneered. He immediately kicked out and rushed towards Ma Yujie. His right hand formed a palm and blasted towards Ma Yujie's face without hesitation. Sichu Liangji's face was ferocious as he said coldly, Damn fatty, you dare to play with me? You have to pay the price. Ma Yujie's eyes were cold as he said indifferently, a mere mid-stage god of creation trash dares to be arrogant in front of me. As he spoke, Ma Yujie's right palm suddenly blasted out. There was no fluctuation of the power of the heavenly Tao. This guy directly blasted out with his physical body. Zhuowen knew very well that Sichu Liangji was finished. Ma Yujie's origin was too mysterious, especially his physical body. Even he was afraid of him. Previously, he had been at a disadvantage when facing this guy head-on with his peak 5-star Pangu sacred body. It could be seen that Ma Yujie's physical body was much more terrifying than many alien races. He was definitely not an ordinary person. Crack! Ma Yujie's palm broke Sichu Liangji's right palm. Then, he suddenly raised his left hand and ruthlessly slapped Sichu Liangji's face. The poor Sichu Liangji was directly stunned by this palm. He was sent flying and smashed into the ground, twitching continuously. Ma Yujie strode in front of Sichu Liangji and grabbed his shoulder, forcing him to kneel in front of him. It's time for you to keep your promise. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. Ma Yujie's eyes were filled with killing intent. Sichu Liangji was frightened and trembled. He hurriedly kowtowed 3 times to Ma Yujie and called him grandpa without any integrity. That's more like it. Come here and kowtow 3 times to your other grandpa. Ma Yujie's expression softened as he pointed at Zhuowen and said to Sichu Liangji. Sichu Liangji didn't dare to resist Ma Yujie. He kowtowed 3 times to Zhuowen and called him grandpa at the same time. Zhongli Haoyang stood in place and didn't say anything to stop him. Instead, she looked at Ma Yujie with her beautiful eyes. Although this fatty didn't look very reliable, his strength surprised her. Sichu Liangji was the strongest genius of the Scarlet Heaven Sword Tower. He was a mid-stage Genesis Lord. However, he was defeated by this fatty in one move. Moreover, this fatty defeated Sichu Liangji with his physical strength. This made Zhongli Haoyang even more afraid of this fatty. Not only Zhongli Haoyang, but the others also revealed a surprised expression. They didn't expect this fatty to be so powerful. Chapter 30-25. Sorcerer Gods. Zhongli Haoyang gazed deeply at Ma Yujie. She had truly underestimated this guy. She hadn't expected him to be so powerful. Yarou Xiangjuan and Jiang Qixing exchanged a glance. They could see the shock in each other's eyes. Yarou Xiangjuan wasn't too surprised. When she had teamed up with Ma Yujie before, they had encountered a creator-level mutated beast. Ma Yujie had helped her escape from that beast, so she knew that Ma Yujie was powerful. He wasn't any weaker than Zhuowen. Jiang Qixing, on the other hand, was truly shocked. He had always thought that this fatty was just a playboy. He hadn't expected him to be a powerful character. As for why this fatty had become Long Wen's friend, he thought it was more likely a coincidence. Now that Ma Yujie had displayed his powerful array Dao skills and terrifying strength, Jiang Qixing finally understood why Ma Yujie had become friends with someone as ruthless as Long Wen. They had become friends because their skills were similar. Of course, the friend that Jiang Qixing thought of was Zhuowen's was in quotation marks. Ma Yujie always claimed to be his best friend, but at the most critical moment, he was the one who had screwed him over the most. Both of you are creation-level god formation masters? The Holy Maiden of the Phoenix people couldn't help but ask when her beautiful eyes landed on Ma Yujie and Zhuowen. Hehe, of course. We're not just any Genesis Divine Array masters. We're much stronger than some trash, Ma Yujie said proudly. Brother Long, the two of us broke this array. Let's go in first. Just follow behind me, Ma Yujie said casually. He put his arm around Zhuowen's shoulder and entered the plaza ahead of everyone else. The Holy Maiden of the Phoenix people frowned slightly, but she didn't say anything. She just followed behind silently. Zhongli Haoyang, on the other hand, was calm and composed. She led the human team and followed closely behind. This damn fatty is really arrogant. And that Long Wen, he killed many of our mutated beasts. How dare these two walk in front of us? Holy Maiden, are we just going to let them do as they please? Moses came to the Holy Maiden of the Phoenix people and secretly transmitted his voice to her. The Holy Maiden of the Phoenix people's expression didn't change. She replied indifferently, they won't be able to jump around for long. We're just in case. Let's get close to Gonggong's body first. Gonggong was one of the 12 ancestors. His body is earth-shattering. And even after his death, his body can't be broken through with ordinary method. The humans' understanding of the ancestors' divine array. They know nothing about extracting blood's blood essence. So what if Long Wen and Ma Yujie entered the altar first? They are also helpless, aren't they? After we enter the altar, the first thing we will do is to extract Gonggong's spirit blood as soon as possible. Once we do that, it will be time to deal with these human beings. Moses's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly bowed. In the end, he praised the Holy Maiden for being astute and wise. Everyone came to the front of the altar. Looking at the huge ring-shaped altar high above, everyone felt small and insignificant. Thank you so much, young sister. Ma Yujie laughed mischievously. He ignored Zhongli and Haoyang's pretty face, which had darkened because of this form of address, and ascended the altar with Zhuowen. On the stairs, Zhuowen looked at Ma Yujie with slight bewilderment and sent a voice transmission. Brother Ma, the order of entering the altar doesn't seem to affect us, right? Why did you raise such an unnecessary request? Ma Yujie smiled and said, Brother Long, you may not have seen this kind of altar, but I've seen many of them before. This altar is called the altar of the god of sorcerer. It's used to store powerful creatures. This altar can only be entered 3 times, and only 2 people can enter each time. The interval between each entry is 3 days. If we don't ask to enter the altar first, I'm afraid it won't be easy for us to enter it. Also, don't worry. The altar of the god of sorcerer is something from ancient times. In this era, those who know about it are almost extinct. Be it Zhongli Hao Yang or the Phoenix People's Saintess, they know nothing about the altar of the god of sorcerer. Zhuo Wen's eyes narrowed. He finally understood why Ma Yujie had made such a request. So it was because of this. Of course, Zhuowen was even more afraid of Ma Yujie. This guy even knew about the altar of the god of sorcerer. What kind of background did he have? Zhuowen and Ma Yujie took the lead and entered the top of the altar. At the top of the altar, there were bone flags. These bone flags fluttered in the wind and emitted a decaying aura. Let's go. Follow me to the center of the altar, Ma Yujie suddenly said and hurriedly entered the center of the altar. At the center, surrounded by the bone flags, there was an exquisite magic array. When the 2 of them entered the magic array, a teleportation force spread out. Zhuowen's vision darkened and the 2 of them disappeared from the altar. When Zhuowen opened his eyes, he found that he was no longer on the altar. Instead, he was in the air above the altar, where Gonggong's body was stored. After Ma Yujie and Zhuowen were completely teleported away by the magic array, Zhongli Hao Yang and the Phoenix People's Saintess arrived at the top of the altar. They naturally noticed that Zhuowen and Ma Yujie had disappeared from the magic array. This altar really allows us to enter the place where Gonggong's body is stored. The Phoenix People's Saintess' beautiful eyes lit up. Although she knew that Gonggong's body was in the air, they had already tried. It was impossible to fly in the plaza. There was an extremely powerful restriction on the air. They were just like mortals. They could only stand below and look at Gonggong's body. With this magic array, it was naturally the best way to enter the air. Because the magic array could only accommodate 2 people at a time, both sides discussed and agreed that the Phoenix People's Saintess and Zhongli Hao Yang would enter first. However, the moment the 2 of them approached the magic array, they were blocked by a barrier. A sentence appeared above the magic array. Teleport 3 times, 2 people each time, 3 days apart. Everyone was dumbfounded. They naturally understood the meaning of this sentence. In other words, the teleportation array could only teleport 6 people once every 3 days, and only 2 people at a time. Did that fatty know this would happen? Is that why he made such a request at the beginning? The Phoenix People's Saintess' expression was ugly. She began to suspect that the fatty already knew the function of the altar. Otherwise, he would not have made such a useless request. Chapter 30:26. Breakthrough to 6 stars. Zhongli Hao Yang nodded and had no objections. She said in a deep voice, "You and I will enter the 2nd time. Brother Yi and Moses will enter the 3rd time. I believe no one has any objections to sending their strongest in. Don't worry, if Brother Yi and I are lucky enough to obtain the ancestral witch's blood essence, we won't take it for ourselves. When we come out, we will distribute the blood essence." Zhongli and Hao Yang's words were immediately echoed by the others in the team. Some of them were worried that they wouldn't be able to enter the place where Gonggong's body was kept, and would gain nothing. If that happened, wouldn't their efforts be in vain? Zhongli Hao Yang's words were a warning to them. Everyone expressed their support for Zhongli Hao Yang's arrangement. The Phoenix People's Saintess sneered at Zhongli Hao Yang and the others. She thought to herself disdainfully, they are just mere humans. How dare they dream of obtaining the ancestral witch's blood essence? The Phoenix People's Saintess was confident that these humans didn't have the correct method to extract the ancestral witch's blood essence. She was taught the correct method by the clan leader of the Phoenix people. She even had the corresponding tools. If she could enter the place where Gonggong's body was stored, she would definitely gain a lot. As for Zhuowen and Ma Yujie who entered first, she didn't care about them. So what if they stayed beside Gonggong's body for 3 more days? If they couldn't grasp the method to extract the ancestral witch's blood essence, it would be useless no matter how long they stayed. Haha. We finally found Gonggong's body. Ma Yujie looked at the huge body in front of him and couldn't help but laugh heartily. His eyes were blazing. Zhuowen raised his head and looked at Gonggong's body. His eyes suddenly focused and he summoned his clone from the outside world. What's wrong? Ma Yujie asked in surprise when he saw Zhuowen summon his clone. The Gonggong parasite in my clone is acting strangely. It seems to be yearning for something. I'll send my clone to Gonggong's body first. Zhuowen said and jumped onto Gonggong's body. He went to Gonggong's chest and the clone sat down cross-legged. At this moment, a thumb-sized bug was wriggling on the forehead of the clone, letting out a soft hiss. The voice seemed to be yearning for something. Zhuowen soon found out what this Gonggong Jiyu worm craved. It was actually Gonggong's spirit blood. Ji Hao's clone's eyes sparkled as he gently pressed his right hand on Gonggong's chest. Instantly, he found a strong stream of spirit blood surging out of Gonggong's chest, flowing into his body through his palm. These vital energy and blood continued to circulate in his meridians before finally surging to his Tianling acupoint and being absorbed by the Gonggong Jiyu worm. Zhuowen's eyes shone brightly. He knew that Gonggong Jiyu was absorbing the essence blood to strengthen itself. However, during this process, he could absorb part of the essence blood to improve his Pangu sacred body. He knew that he had reached the final step of fusing with Gonggong bugs, but he found that his Pangu sacred body showed no sign of breaking through. If the Gonggong Jiyu worm cooperated with Gonggong's spirit blood, his Pangu sacred body might really break through and become a 6-star Pangu sacred body. Thinking of this, Zhuowen hurriedly operated the Pangu sacred body. Zhuowen seized a part of the essence blood that was absorbed from Gonggong's body and began to refine his body. Ma Yujie watched quietly. He saw that Zhuowen's clone was emitting a crystal clear light. In the crystal clear light, there was a little bloodlight flashing. He knew that it was Gonggong's spirit blood. Damn it, this guy is taking advantage of me. After this guy breaks through, I must ask him to get me more spirit blood. Ma Yujie complained. At the same time, he looked at Zhuowen with some fear. Since he knew that Zhuowen cultivated the Pangu sacred body, he knew that this guy's future achievements would not be low. However, he was also worried. He knew more secrets than other cultivators, and he knew how Pangu died. Since Zhuowen had inherited Pangu's legacy and cultivated the Pangu sacred body, he would definitely be targeted by heaven in the future. Maybe he would follow in Pangu's footsteps in the future. Damn it. Why should I worry about this guy? I can't even protect myself. I've been trapped in this world for so many years. Instead of worrying about this guy, I'd better worry about myself. Ma Yujie shook his head and said helplessly. Time gradually passed, and soon, 2 days had passed. During these 2 days, Ma Yujie saw that Zhuowen's clone's momentum was getting stronger and more terrifying. Even the clone's body became more crystal clear, without any impurities. It looked very clean. At the same time, Ma Yujie's eyes fell on Gonggong's body under his feet. The corners of his mouth kept twitching. Gonggong's body now looked a little thin, much thinner than when they first entered this place. Ma Yujie knew that it was because Zhuowen had absorbed too much of Gonggong's spirit blood. This guy still hasn't broken through. Gonggong's spirit blood is going to be absorbed by this guy, isn't it? Ma Yujie looked anxious, but he didn't dare to disturb Zhuowen's cultivation. After all, Ma Yujie didn't know how to extract the spirit blood of Gonggong. After all, the body of Gonggong was way too strong, and the spirit blood of Gonggong was hidden in the most inconspicuous part of his body. Therefore, Ma Yujie alone couldn't extract the spirit blood of Gonggong. He knew that if he wanted to get the spirit blood, he still had to rely on Zhuowen. If Zhuowen really absorbed all the spirit blood because of his breakthrough, then all his efforts in entering the dark door would be in vain. Suddenly, a vast and terrifying aura caught Ma Yujie's attention. Zhuowen's clone, who was seated at the very front, suddenly opened his eyes. His body was translucent to the extreme, as if his entire body was transparent. However, the presence he gave off was like that of a huge beast that had just awakened. It was terrifying and frightening. Roar. Zhuowen's clone suddenly raised his head and roared at the sky. His roar throbbed violently like thunder. The wind and clouds swept, and the world shook. A terrifying aura burst out from Zhuowen's body. Zhuowen's eyes shone with excitement. His clone's Pangu sacred body had finally broken through from the peak of the 5-star level to the early stage of the 6-star level. Zhuowen felt that his clone was full of power. This kind of power made him feel like he could control everything. It made Zhuowen feel an indescribable pride in his heart. Phew, fortunately, I have Gonggong's spirit blood. Otherwise, it would be very difficult for me to break through to the 6-star level with just Gonggong's poisonous insect. Zhuowen murmured to himself. His eyes were filled with joy. At the same time, he lamented the difficulty of advancing his Pangu sacred body. In the past, he could at least advance 1 star with the help of Gonggong's poisonous insects. Now that his Pangu sacred body had reached the 5-star level, it was much more difficult to advance. Chapter 3027. Inheritance. Zhuowen knew that it would be more difficult for him to upgrade his Pangu sacred body in the future. Moreover, he had a hunch that he would need more than 1 venomous worm to upgrade his 6-star Pangu sacred body to 7-star. Thinking of this, Zhuowen was a little worried. The Pangu sacred body was indeed a big eater. He could not even fill his stomach. He could imagine that in the next period of time, he would have to constantly search for a large number of resources and ancestral sorcery venomous worms in order to upgrade his Pangu sacred body. Brother Zhuo, I thought you were going to suck all of Gonggong's blood essence. Ma Yujie quickly came to Zhuowen and said to Zhuowen. He was obviously relieved. Zhuowen looked at Ma Yujie and noticed that Gonggong's corpse behind him had become thinner. He suddenly thought of something and said awkwardly, I've been cultivating all this time. I didn't notice that I had absorbed so much essence blood. By the way, Brother Ma, how long have I been cultivating? Zhuowen asked in a deep voice. 2 days. There is still 1 day before the next teleportation. It is enough time for us to collect enough blood essence. Ma Yujie said in a deep voice. How much blood essence do you need? Zhuowen asked. He. It would be best if it was all of Gonggong's blood essence. Ma Yujie rubbed his hands. Zhuowen looked at the fatty speechlessly. This guy is too greedy, isn't he? I am just kidding. Just fill this barrel for me. Ma Yujie also saw the strange look in Zhuowen's eyes. He was a little embarrassed. He took out a barrel that was half the height of a man from his spirit ring and put it in front of Zhuowen. Zhuowen took the barrel and jumped on Gonggong's chest. He reached out his right hand and a light blue venomous worm appeared in his palm. It was Gonggong's venomous worm. The venomous worm drilled into Gonggong's chest and made a small hole. Zhuowen used his spirit sense to reach deep into Gonggong's chest and soon found the space where the blood essence was hidden. With a sweep of his divine sense, he swept up all the essence blood in the space and poured it into the wooden bucket. Soon, the wooden bucket was filled with Gonggong's spirit blood, which was full of energy. Take it. Zhuowen handed the wooden bucket to Ma Yujie, who excitedly took the wooden bucket and put it into his spirit ring. The Gonggong Jiu worm crawled out again and stood on Zhuowen's palm, hissing as if it was very unhappy. Are you complaining for Gonggong? Zhuowen gave a bitter smile. After all, Gonggong was one of the 12 ancestors of Magi, and used to be one of the most powerful beings in this starry sky. Later on, he died, and his corpse was immortal. Now that he had been found, his blood essence was actually going to be divided among others. How tragic was this? Hiss hiss hiss. The Gonggong Jiu bug suddenly moved to the spot between Gonggong's eyebrows and hissed, seeming to want Zhuowen to go over. Zhuowen had no choice but to follow. Looking at the Jiu bug's movements, it seemed to want him to put his palm between Gonggong's eyebrows. Zhuowen hesitated for a while, but still put his right hand between Gonggong's eyebrows. Suddenly, there was a boom in his mind, like a thunderbolt, rumbling. Immediately, an ancient image appeared in the depths of his mind. This image showed the 12 ancestors of Magi and the 3 pure ones fighting against chaos. Zhuowen had seen this image in the memories of other ancestors of Magi before. He knew that the 12 ancestors of Magi and the 3 pure ones fell because of the invasion of chaos. He also knew that the invasion of chaos was only temporary. Once it stirred up trouble again, It would be a great disaster in this starry sky. The image quickly changed to Gong Gong, who was severely injured and drifting in the starry sky. Finally, he entered the depths of the dark portal and sealed his venomous worm before he died, and set up the altar of the Magi god to store his body. Human. I feel Pangu's aura on you. You have received Pangu's inheritance. Suddenly, a deep voice sounded in Zhuowen's ears. Zhuowen looked around blankly, only to find that after the image disappeared, the space he was in was pitch black. The voice seemed to come from the depths of the darkness, making him unable to identify the specific direction. You are ancestor Magi Gong Gong. You're not dead. Zhuowen frowned slightly and could not help but ask. I'm already dead, this is only a trace of my soul. If I didn't feel the aura of my venomous worm and Pangu's aura on you, I would have killed you when you absorbed my essence blood. Gong Gong's voice was faint, with a terrifying majesty that Zhuowen could not imagine. Cold sweat trickled down Zhuowen's forehead. This was an ancestor Magi-level powerhouse, a powerhouse who stood at the peak of the starry sky. Even if he was dead, if he attacked him with just a trace of his divine consciousness, he would probably lose a layer of skin even if he did not die. It seemed that these real almighty powerhouses were not to be trifled with, even if they were dead. Human, you haven't answered my first question. Gong Gong's voice sounded a little impatient. You're right. I have indeed received Pangu's inheritance and cultivated Pangu's sacred body, Zhuowen said in a deep voice. Gong Gong suddenly fell silent. After a while, he spoke again and said, No wonder you can integrate with my venomous worm. You have cultivated Pangu's sacred body. Your Pangu's sacred body has just been promoted to 6 stars, right? Gong Gong asked in a deep voice. Yes, it's all thanks to your venomous worm. Zhuowen smiled awkwardly. You have inherited Pangu's inheritance, so you should know your mission. In the future, you must fight against the approaching chaos for this starry sky. Even if you die, you must resist the invasion of the chaos. Do you understand? Gong Gong said faintly. Zhuowen could only nod, but he did not take it seriously. The chaos was too far away from him, and Zhuowen had never seen what the chaos was like. Therefore, he did not agree with this mission. Originally, I left my venomous worm and body to look for an inheritor. Since you are Pangu's inheritance, it is the same for me to pass on my power to you. Next, you must follow my instructions. I will pass on all my life's energy to you, so that your Pangu's sacred body can be further improved. As soon as Gong Gong finished speaking, Zhuowen suddenly opened his eyes. His right hand was still in the position between Gong Gong's eyebrows. Zhuowen's eyes were very serious. He took a deep look at Gong Gong, and Gong Gong's vicissitude voice sounded in his mind. Sit on my Tianling acupoint, and I will pass on my energy to you. If you can't bear it, tell me in advance, and I will stop passing on my energy. Zhuowen nodded, then went to Gong Gong's Tianling acupoint and sat down cross-legged. Immediately, Gong Gong's huge body began to emit a sparkling light. Chapter 30-28 The Disappearing Corpse. At this moment, Ma Yujie's eyes were full of satisfaction after obtaining a bucket of ancestral witch's blood essence. He began to search around the ancestral witch's corpse to see if there were any other treasures. But soon, he found that there was something wrong with the ancestral witch's corpse. It was because the ancestral witch's corpse began to emit white light, which formed into light spots that floated up. Ma Yujie followed the direction of the light spots and saw Zhuowen sitting on Gonggong's Tianling acupoint at a glance. These light spots all gathered in Zhuowen's body. This guy. He's going to eat it all. Ma Yujie held his forehead. There was a trace of speechlessness in his eyes, but it was more serious. In fact, when he was close to ancestral witch Gonggong, he had a bad feeling that if he tried to extract the ancestral witch's blood essence himself, he would definitely end up badly. Ma Yujie believed in his hunch, so he wisely didn't do it before. Instead, he let Zhuowen do it. After all, the latter had fused with Gonggong's poisonous insects and cultivated the Pangu sacred body. He was more qualified to extract the ancestral witch's blood essence than Ma Yujie. Ma Yujie suspected that Gong Gong might still have a trace of his remnant soul. Once someone touched his corpse, they would probably suffer a strong backlash. Zhuowen might have communicated with Gong Gong's remnant soul and gained its approval. Now, Gong Gong wanted to pass his inheritance directly to Zhuowen. Thinking of this, Ma Yujie couldn't help but shake his head and smile bitterly. I think the biggest winner this time should be this guy. Not only did he get Gong Gong's poisonous insects, but he also got Gong Gong's inheritance. Fortunately, I already got a bucket of blood essence, otherwise. Thinking of the Phoenix People's Saintess, Zhongli, and Hao Yang who hadn't come up yet, Ma Yujie knew that they probably wouldn't be able to get any benefits. Time gradually passed. After 20 hours, ancestral witch Gong Gong's huge corpse turned into light spots and gathered in Zhuowen's body. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were shining with an unblinking light. He kept operating the Pangu sacred body and absorbing the energy that ancestral witch Gong Gong had passed on to him. He could clearly feel that the level of his Pangu sacred body was increasing as he absorbed the energy. When the inheritance of Gong Gong ended, Ji Hao merged the last stream of energy into his body. His body was scorching hot like never before. Creak creak. The doppelganger slowly stood up, and its body actually burst out with continuous explosive sounds. An aura even fiercer than before emerged from the doppelganger's body. Gong Gong's legacy directly upgraded my Pangu sacred body from the early 6-star level to the late 6-star level. Zhuowen's eyes were as dazzling as the stars. He jumped up in excitement and couldn't help but laugh heartily. The clone leaped to the main body's side and entered the main body with a single step, merging with the main body. Zhuowen was bursting with confidence. With his current strength, even the top geniuses like the Phoenix People's Saintess and Zhongli Hao Yang were no match for him. Brother Zhuo, you've inherited the legacy of ancestor Magus Gong Gong. Ma Yujie approached Zhuowen and asked cautiously, looking at him. Yes, Gong Gong left a trace of his soul in his mind. Later, he communicated with me and passed the legacy to me, Zhuowen said with a smile. You're really lucky, Ma Yujie muttered, lamenting the unfairness of the world. But soon, he calmed down and said in a deep voice, you've taken the entire legacy of Gong Gong. I think Zhongli Hao Yang and the Phoenix People's Saintess won't let you go. They came here for the essence blood of the ancestor Magus, but you, Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and grinned. I've inherited the legacy of Gong Gong, and I still have a part of the essence blood of the ancestor Magus. But I only give it to people who are pleasing to the eye. As for the alien race, hehe. Gong Gong's essence blood was hidden in a mysterious space inside Gong Gong's body. After Zhuowen had inherited the legacy of Gong Gong, the essence blood in that mysterious space was also stored in the big world by Zhuowen. To be honest, Zhuowen had absorbed too much essence blood before. In fact, he had absorbed most of Gong Gong's essence blood, so there was not much left. Ma Yujie rubbed his hands and said shamelessly, Brother, you still have essence blood in you. Well, give me some more. Zhuowen was speechless as he looked at the thick-skinned Ma Yujie. Ma Yujie felt a little helpless. He could now feel that since this guy's Pangu sacred body had been upgraded, his strength had become much more terrifying than before. In the past, he might have been able to suppress this guy, but now he might be suppressed. When he thought of this, a sense of danger rose in Ma Yujie's heart. He needed to raise his cultivation a little more. Otherwise, Zhuowen would quickly overtake him. Hey! It seems that the barrier of the altar is disappearing. Zhuowen found that the barrier between the void space and the altar below was disappearing. At this moment, the power that restricted the airspace above them was also being weakened. The altar of the sorcerer god and the power around it were originally powered by Gong Gong's corpse. Now that Gong Gong's corpse has disappeared and you have inherited his legacy, I'm afraid that everything will disappear this time. Ma Yujie lowered his head and analyzed, then continued, Brother Zhuo, I think you'd better run away later. No matter if it's the human race or the alien race, after discovering that Gong Gong's corpse has disappeared, I'm afraid that the first thing they will suspect is us. Run away? I don't plan to run away yet. I have something to do with the saintess of the Phoenix people. Zhuowen shook his head. Ma Yujie shrugged and said, It's up to you if you don't want to run away. I'll definitely run away. Seeing that the void space had completely dissipated, Ma Yujie said goodbye to Zhuowen and disappeared on the spot. Zhuowen looked at Ma Yujie, who disappeared without a trace, with a trace of caution in his eyes. Ma Yujie was not only terrifyingly powerful, but he was also very good at escaping. Even he had not been able to capture his escape route and traces. Meanwhile, Zhuowen leisurely landed on the white plaza below. Zhongli Haoyang and the Saintess of the Phoenix people, who were about to enter the array of the altar and teleport into the void space above, stared blankly at Zhuowen, who was descending from above. Not only were the two women stunned, but the human and alien race teams were also stunned. What was going on? Wasn't there supposed to be a terrifying restrictive power in the square? Cultivators couldn't fly up, let alone come down from above. They could only teleport through the array. But what was going on now? They also realized that the fat man, who had always been by Zhuowen's side, had disappeared. Although they could see Gong Gong's huge body in the void space from the square, they could only vaguely see it. Chapter 30-29. Mosa's provocation. Although the huge body of ancestral shaman Gong Gong seemed to have disappeared, which surprised everyone, they didn't pay too much attention to it. They thought that some kind of formation had appeared in the space and concealed the scene inside. Now that the restrictive force in the sky had disappeared, the void space was completely revealed to everyone. Gong Gong's body was gone, and so was the fat man, leaving only the scarred youth in front of them. Long Wen, where is ancestral shaman Gong Gong's body? The Phoenix people's saintess suddenly berated. She had a bad premonition. Zhuowen didn't pay attention to the Phoenix people's saintess. Instead, he waved his hand, took out 7 jade bottles, and distributed them to the 7 people in the human team. Jiang Qisheng put away the jade bottles and asked doubtfully, "Brother Long, what is this?" Zhongli Haoyang, Yi Chidong, and the others also held the jade bottles, looking confused. "This is ancestral shaman Gong Gong's blood essence," Zhuowen said indifferently. "What? It's ancestral shaman's blood essence." Zhongli Haoyang's beautiful eyes widened, and she hurriedly opened the bottle cork. She immediately smelled blood. Of course, along with the smell of blood was a rich energy that shocked her. This energy was so surging that she hurriedly closed the bottle cork. She was certain that this jade bottle contained ancestral shaman Gong Gong's blood essence. Although her purpose in entering the door of darkness was to obtain the ancestral shaman's blood essence, she also knew that they didn't know how to extract it. They would be satisfied with just a few drops. But now, they had directly obtained a bottle of ancestral shaman's blood essence. This harvest greatly exceeded their expectations. "Brother Long, thank you for your generosity." Zhongli Haoyang put away the jade bottles and solemnly bowed deeply to Zhuowen. She knew very well that even if she personally went to ancestral shaman Gong Gong's body, she, who didn't know how to extract it, couldn't obtain so much ancestral shaman's blood essence. Yi Chidong, Jiang Qisheng, Yaro Xiangjuan, and the others all thanked Zhuowen from the bottom of their hearts. It had to be said that Zhuowen's generosity had helped them a lot. Even Sichu Liangji, who had kowtowed to Zhuowen and called him grandpa, sincerely bowed and thanked Zhuowen. Compared to the preciousness of the ancestral shaman's blood essence, kowtowing and calling him grandfather was simply a small matter that wasn't worth mentioning. If Zhuowen asked him to kowtow and call him grandpa now, he would definitely do it without hesitation. When the saintess of the Phoenix people saw that Zhuowen was actually distributing the ancestral witch's blood essence, her beautiful eyes narrowed. She immediately became furious and said, "You actually have the ancestral witch's blood essence. Did you cause Gong Gong's corpse to disappear? Did you take Gong Gong's body away?" As soon as the Phoenix people's saintess said this, the eyes of the foreign races turned hostile. Even the eyes of the human race flickered. No one knew what they were thinking. Compared to a bottle of ancestral witch's blood essence, the entire ancestral witch's body was obviously more precious. If Gong Gong's body was really taken away by this person, it would definitely be a big deal. If news of this spread out, this person would probably attract the attention of many powerful beings. Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy as he said coldly, the ancestral witch's body is rarely seen in the secular world. I think that in this part of the universe, there are basically no spatial artifacts that can contain the ancestral witch's body. Saintess, your words are unreasonable. Haha. Unreasonable? Then tell me, where did Gong Gong's body go? Other than being taken away by you, is there any other possibility? The Phoenix people's saintess sneered. I received the ancestral witch Gong Gong's inheritance, and I did indeed obtain a part of the ancestral witch's blood essence. I gave away a part of it, and now I only have this last bottle of ancestral witch's blood essence. As for Gong Gong's body, after the ancestral witch's inheritance, it collapsed and turned into countless specks of light. Zhuowen looked calm. With a flick of his finger, he took out another jade bottle and waved it in front of the Phoenix people's saintess. Zhuowen said this because he did not want others to think that the ancestral witch's body was taken away by him. Compared to the ancestral witch's body, the ancestral witch's inheritance required luck, and it was not suitable for everyone. Therefore, he said that the ancestral witch's inheritance was more suitable than directly obtaining the ancestral witch's body. After all, the ancestral witch's body contained the ancestral witch's blood essence, which was something that almost all human and alien races desired. If he really did obtain it, he would be attacked by all. However, not everyone was interested in the ancestral witch's inheritance. At least, the human race was not interested in it. After all, the ancestral witch's inheritance was very different from the human race's cultivation method. Zhuowen cultivated the Pangu sacred body, and he did not directly inherit the ancestral witch's cultivation method. Instead, he inherited the last bit of energy from the ancestral witch's body. Of course, although the method of inheriting the ancestral witch's inheritance was safer than taking away the ancestral witch's body, it was still very dangerous. If the news spread, there would probably still be many people from the human race and alien race who would hunt him down. Zhuowen had already thought about this when he received the ancestral witch's inheritance, so he was already mentally prepared. The only thing that comforted him was that his Pangu sacred body had finally made a breakthrough and reached the late 6-star level. He finally had the power to protect himself. Now, just by relying on the power of his avatar, he could fight against the Creation Lord. He could even defeat the slightly weaker Creation Lord. As for Senki Yin, who was a supreme expert at the early stage of the sky-reaching realm, Zhuowen might not be a match for him at all. However, if such an expert wanted to squash him like an ant, it was not very likely. In front of such an expert, Zhuowen still had the power to protect himself to a certain extent with the various trump cards he had. You've obtained the ancestral witch's inheritance. That's impossible. You're just a human. How could you have obtained the ancestral witch's approval? The saintess of the Phoenix people shook her head, then spread her hands at Zhuowen and said, "Give this jade bottle to me. Then, hand over the ancestral witch's inheritance, and I won't do anything to you. I'll let you live." Zhuowen chuckled and said, "Do you think I'm an idiot? You want me to hand over the ancestral witch's inheritance? You're dreaming. So you don't want to hand it over?" The saintess of the Phoenix people's pretty face was cold, and her beautiful eyes became very unfriendly. A wave of killing intent burst forth from her. Moses took a big step forward and shouted coldly, "Little bastard, do you know who our saintess is? It's your honor to ask you to hand over the ancestral witch's inheritance and blood essence. Why are you still chattering over there? If you know what's good for you, hand it over quickly. Don't force us to make a move." "Oh, if I don't hand it over, you're going to make a move?" Zhuowen's eyes flashed with a sharp light, and he looked coldly at Moses. Moses had been harboring evil intentions towards him ever since he entered the door of darkness. Zhuowen had long since found this alien an eyesore. Previously, he had been busy breaking the formation. Moses was quite strong, and it would take some effort to kill him. Moreover, he might have to expose his trump card, the Huyi divine bow. Thus, Zhuowen had not made a move until now. Chapter 30. Tyrannical Moses was furious. He was getting more and more annoyed with the scarred youth. Before entering the door of darkness, he had already killed quite a number of people from the Merfolk tribe. Furthermore, He had even killed the genius of the Merfolk tribe, Sauron. Even Eldam Dar had suffered at the hands of this fellow. Now, this kid was even more unrepentant, contradicting him like this. To be more precise, this kid seemed to be looking down on him, not putting him in his eyes at all. This kind of contempt made Moses very unhappy. This guy was just a mere human, and his cultivation was only at the eternal overlord level. What right did he have to look down on him? I'll make my move today. You don't respect the Saintus, which means you're looking down on us foreign races. Today, I'll teach you a lesson. Moses snorted coldly. With a stomp of his right foot, he shot out like a cannonball, rapidly rushing towards Juoan. The Phoenix People's Saintess watched this scene silently, not stopping it. She also didn't put Juoan in her eyes, but she was very dissatisfied with Juoan's attitude. Moses's move came at the right time. She was very clear about Moses's strength. Among this group of people, Moses should be second only to her and Zhongli Haoyang. He was even stronger than Yi Qigong. He was very powerful. Zhongli Haoyang's beautiful eyes turned cold when she saw Moses attack again. Just as she was about to attack, a blazing aura came crashing towards her. Zhongli Haoyang raised her head slightly and immediately discovered the source of the aura was the Phoenix People's Saintess. At this moment, the Phoenix People's Saintess was staring coldly at her. Zhongli Haoyang knew very well that if she dared to help Juoan, the Phoenix People's Saintess would immediately attack her. Although Zhongli Haoyang was very confident in her own strength, she knew that the Phoenix People's Saintess was even more terrifying. If she were to face the Phoenix People's Saintess head-on, she might not be able to gain much of an advantage. She might even be at a disadvantage. Thinking of this, Zhongli Haoyang didn't act rashly. She just looked at Juoan's back and side, feeling a little guilty. After all, Juoan had just given her a bottle of ancestral witch's blood essence, but she was unable to help when Moses attacked. Jiang Qixing and Yaro Xiangjuan's expressions changed greatly as they secretly cursed Moses for being shameless. However, Moses's movements were simply too fast. In addition, the disparity in strength between them and Moses was too great. Even if they went over, they would only be cannon fodder. On the other hand, Yi Qidong and Sichu Liangji merely stood where they were with flickering eyes. They had no intention of attacking at all. Juoan silently watched all of this and sneered in his heart. In the human clan team, apart from Jiang Qixing and Yaro Xiangjuan, only Zhongli Haoyang was a little more upright. The others were just joking around. Haha. You dare to be absent-minded in front of a great enemy? You really don't know how the word death is written. At this moment, Moses had already rushed in front of Juoan. He could see at a glance that Juoan was actually absent-minded. He was annoyed and angry in his heart. He suddenly punched out, and endless astral winds swept out. Moses wanted to directly smash this hateful and arrogant human's cheek with a punch, then cripple his limbs, and finally slowly torture him to death. What a terrifying fist wind. This Moses is going all out. I'm afraid Brother Long is in danger. Zhongli Haoyang also felt Moses's terrifying fist wind. Her pretty face slightly froze, and there was some worry in her beautiful eyes. Juoan stood in place with a calm expression. There was no change in his expression. As Moses's fist got closer and closer, he slowly stretched out his right hand. The movement of his right hand was very slow, but it accurately caught Moses's right fist. Bang! The moment Moses's fist hit Juoan's right palm, a muffled sound like thunder exploded. Then, Moses was shocked to find that the human in front of him didn't even sway. He was as still as a mountain, standing in front of him. As for the scene that he imagined of this person's cheek being smashed by him, it didn't happen. At the same time, Moses saw the face of the young man in front of him again. There was a faintly discernible mocking expression on his face. Moses was furious. This guy actually dared to mock him. Die for me. Flood dragon explosion. Moses's empty left fist suddenly hooked up and smashed out fiercely. Suddenly, the space between the two of them collapsed. From the collapsed spatial rift, countless tides surged out, manifesting one after another terrifying and ferocious flood dragon after another. These flood dragons instantly surrounded Juoan, and then began to tighten around Zhuoan, wanting to completely strangle him. The tide receded, and the flood dragons gradually disappeared, but Moses's face was full of horror. This was because he found that the palm that was holding his right fist didn't loosen. Instead, it tightened fiercely. The strength was so great that he couldn't help but groan in pain. Moses, that's all you've got. The tide collapsed, and Zhuoan still stood in the same place like a mountain. The mocking expression on his face became more intense, and the fear in Moses's eyes became more profound. How is this possible? You're not hurt at all? Moses said in a trembling voice. He suddenly realized that he was so small in front of this human in front of him. It was as if this human in front of him could take his life at will with just a thought. This feeling intensified the fear in his heart, and he couldn't help but cry out in fear. Previously, you've been clamoring in front of me, calling me a little bastard, an ant, as if I'm not worth mentioning at all in front of you. You can easily crush me if you want to. Crack. As Zhuoan spoke, his right hand suddenly clenched, and directly crushed Moses's right fist. Moses screamed in horror, and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. I saw that you've been clamoring for so long, and I really thought that you were so powerful that you could easily crush me to death. Now it seems you're just a dog that knows how to bark. As for your strength, hey, it really disappoints me. As Zhuoan spoke indifferently, his right hand suddenly twisted, and Moses's right hand was directly torn off by him. You said that I didn't respect the saint, and wanted to teach me a lesson. Then, what about that lesson? Rip. Zhuoan also tore off Moses's left arm, leaving behind Moses's shrill screams. You said that I was distracted in front of a great enemy, and didn't know how to write the word death. But let me tell you now, I really do know how to write the word death. Zhuoan held Moses's legs with both hands and tore them off, and a mist of blood gushed out. Moses fell to the ground, and blood flowed all over the ground. Zhuoan slowly squatted down in front of Moses, and used the blood on the ground to write the word death in front of Moses. Did you see the word death clearly? After Zhuoan finished writing the word death, he grabbed Moses's head and said indifferently. Moses felt fear. The fear of death was so close to him, and he was terrified. I beg you to spare my life. Moses's voice was filled with regret. Zhuoan didn't say anything. Instead, his right hand formed a finger, and pressed it on Moses's forehead. A terrifying and violent force surged into Moses's divine soul, completely dissipating it. Moses stared at Zhuoan, and finally fell on the word death, and completely lost his breath. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.